You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton. Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single...
He couldn't just
and we're
answer
live
the
again,
question.
baby.
She didn't even ask it in a terrible way. It's a pretty straightforward question that really deserves an answer. Why do you think he won't answer it?
Night, every single weekend.
And why would you continue to support a guy who won't answer a question like that, number one, and who won't release the files without massive coaxing by people like Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene and other members of Congress?
They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did.
Yeah, 2 more nights. Can't back out now.
Andrew Weissman here. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people.
In blood.
You just keep going on the Epstein files.
Because I cut myself while helping out
catering. The Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax.
Make a sequel.
Okay, how about this? Okay, forget about Jeffrey Epstein. Why do we still have a Federal Reserve? Why haven't you instituted or overseen the institution of a sound money system? Why does the domestic terror cell known as the IRS still exist? Why are Americans constantly concerned about crossing their T's and dotting their I's and doing all their taxes and income tax? Why don't you relieve all Americans of that burden? Why have you sought another $200 billion to continue this non-war with Iran? How about those questions? Can you answer those, Donnie? Or are you going to get a little upset at me for asking that?
I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me, but he gave money to Democrats.
Miriam did, though. Miriam gave you a bunch of money. Was it $250 million? And what's with the accordion hands?
And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and is so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump, and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible. And you're not credible as a reporter.
And it's true. Her news organization, CBS, ABC, NBC, even Faux News, not credible. They're all propaganda machines. They print out and they peddle propaganda to deceive the American people, and typically it's to onboard them to war. But Donald Trump and all the other psychopathic presidents are no better. So again, this is a kayfabe. This is WWE. This is a dog and pony show meant to deceive, distract, divide, and demoralize us.
I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep of the fund guy was with him all the time. What's his name?
Reid Hoffman.
Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money in the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation. He's a sleazebag. And those are the people, but they don't get any press, they don't get any news, and you're not after the radical left because you're a radical left network. But I think the way you ask a question with the anger and the meanness is terrible. You ought to go back and learn how to be a reporter. No more questions from you.
Was there anger and meanness, though? Let's take a look at it again.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
I did not see anger and meanness. Well, that's the current state of our disturbing illusion. This is the juggling clown show under the political, psychopathic, parasitic big top. If you like these commentary videos, maybe you'll like some of my others. Check out my most popular playlist. I'm sure there's some videos on there that you haven't seen yet. And it would really help the channel if you just watched a couple of those videos. If you want to support the channel, you can do it for free. Just like this video.
Oh, shit. I think everyone, ooh, all my people died, including you. Died.
Should we watch on the YouTube? Dave Chappelle talks about Charlie Kirk and Diddy. Okay.
Shit ain't what it used to be, is it?
Oh, Kirk and
This
Diddy.
nigga Puff got 50 months. I don't like talking about this, but I'm gonna do it. Here's my thing about Puffy. And I gotta state my bias. Years ago, I got attacked on stage in California at the Hollywood Bowl. Now, this was a long time ago. At this time, Charlie Kirk was alive and well. Well, this is another reason it's hard to talk in America, because, you know, if you talk for a living and see Charlie Kirk get murdered that way, I'm gonna be honest, nigga. I was shook. I mean, Charlie Kirk is the wholesome white guy, and if they killed this motherfucker, I said, these whites. We've never seen them like this. They're playing for keeps. And then remember, the next day in the news, when all the information was still shoddy, they came out, they were like, apparently there were transgender messages inscribed on the bullets. I was at home like, oh no! I'm dead as fried chicken.
Hell yeah.
And then weeks later, they said what was written on the bullets. One of the bullets had Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella, Bella, Bella Ciao written on it. Another bullet had written on it, if you're reading this, you're gay. I was at home like, nigga, I'm gonna need to see these bullets. How the fuck is this nigga writing whole paragraphs on bullets? How big are these bullets? What is this nigga, a watchmaker? He can inscribe all this shit on a bullet? I'm not making light of Charlie Kirk dying, but I'm not sure what it means. And I'm not sure I believe what they say it means. I'll tell you what I don't believe. And the whites were quick to say this. They said, Charlie Kirk is this generation's Martin Luther King. No, he's not. Yeah, that's a reach. You know, they both got murdered in a terrible fashion. They both got shot in the neck, but that's about where those similarities end. Because Charlie Kirk is a motherfucking internet personality. No, by design. Fundamentally, he can't function like Dr. King. Internet niggas are negative because they have to be. Because nobody will engage them unless they say shit that makes them upset. That's Charlie Kirk. Could you imagine Dr. King was behaving like Charlie Kirk? Smash that like button and subscribe.
Okay.
Follow me for more content like this. I believe all black people should be free. Change my mind.
What is juice?
What the fuck is juice? I want some of that grape drink.
The Congress took a vote. That October 14th will be Charlie Kirk Remembrance Day, and everybody voted for it.
Oh, damn, I don't want it.
No, I'm not gonna boo it. You can remember, no. Remember that nigga if you want to. And remember him however you want to. But I do know that most of those congresspeople voted for that because they're afraid of political violence. I'm telling you, it's easier to talk in Saudi Arabia. I was on stage not long ago in the States, and niggas got mad because I said, well, you know, maybe Puff will get off. And I said, I hope so. And the crowd was like, boo. Okay, look, it's not that I think Puff is right, but when I got attacked in L.A. at the Hollywood Bowl, people forget Puff was the guy that tackled my attacker. He saved my life. It's a hard nigga to be mad at after that. I had security that night, but you know what I mean? They just wasn't ready. Them niggas had some slippery shoes on or something. They ran out. All them niggas slipped and fell. And Puffy got my attacker and tackled him. And then years later, when I heard about that baby oil, I was like, what did those niggas slip on? $1,000 of baby oil, that's a lie. Remember, he wasn't on trial for having $1,000 of baby oil because it's not a crime to have $1,000 of baby oil. It's gross. It's not illegal. But I'm gonna tell you something else I haven't said, but this is true. In LA one night, I shouldn't even tell, fuck it. I've been to Puffy's house. Ooh. No, I didn't see, I didn't see none of the stuff they said in that trial. I walked to that nigga's living room, house was clean, traction on the floor, nothing slippery. You walk right through.
It should be gone.
Perfectly normal evening. The only thing in hindsight, but at the time it didn't mean nothing to me. I didn't think about it until after I found all that stuff out, but in hindsight it was fucked up. But we was on this back patio, and we was drinking and laughing and talking, and then nigga Puff started swirling his drink like this.
Wait,
and he goes, so Dave. He goes, what are you into? You know me, I was like, I don't know, nigga, books, video games, I didn't know that was my big chance to fuck Cassie. God bless her. I'm not making light of her. What she went through was terrible. But remember, because they kept showing this video of him beating her up in a hotel hallway, which was a terrible video. But he wasn't on trial for that. You remember, he paid her for that before the federal charges ever came up. He paid her $35 million, is what I heard, which doesn't make it right, but I mean, come on, nigga. I do know niggas that have fought Floyd Mayweather for less money than that. And them niggas had to fight for 36 minutes. But Cassie is a gangster. She did something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. She had to testify about her sex life. Boy, that's tough. God save us all from that. Anything you say about sex publicly is gonna sound bad. Even if you're talking about fucking your wife face to face. If the judge is like, tell me about did you fuck your wife face to face? Yes, Your Honor, I did. But could you describe the account? Well, yes, I looked at her in her cold, bored eyes, and then I pulled those big panties aside, and it's like a bush that just screams, I don't give a fuck, and I just, you know what I mean? Just power through it, you know what I mean? Cassie had to do way harder than that. Them questions, they was asking her all kinds. Did Sean Combs pee in your mouth?
What in the hell?
Oh my God, she didn't hesitate.
Are you hearing
Yes,
this?
I'm sorry.
What I thought.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you black in show business and do too well, it's scary, nigga. Like, you gotta get the fuck out of the casino while the getting's good, while you're still winning. If you don't walk away from the table, that's how niggas get Kevin Harted. You already know. That's my man. I'm just saying, if he got a sex tape out, well, it's just a matter of time for me.
Oh, no.
But you know why I be thinking sometimes I want to stop doing comedy? And you know,
I don't want to sound like a braggart saying this, but the real like reason I want to stop is because I'm too goddamn good at it. I'm dope, nigga. Like, no, I'm not even exaggerating. It's not exciting. Every night before I come out on stage, I'll be backstage like, I'm sure this is gonna go well. And it always does. I'm so good at writing jokes, and this is not even an exaggeration. I actually write jokes backwards. I will write a punchline with no particular setup in mind. I just put it on a scrap of paper, and I'll throw that scrap of paper in my fishbowl. I have a fishbowl in my house filled with random punchlines. And every once in a while, I'll shake the bowl, and I'll dig in there and just pull one out and see if I can make that shit work. And I picked one for this special.
That was a lot easier.
It's not an easy punchline to pull off. Are you ready? Here it goes. The punchline is, so I kicked her in the pussy. I haven't finished the joke yet. I just know whatever happens in the beginning of the joke, at the end of the joke, for some reason, I'm gonna kick somebody in the pussy. And it's going to be hilarious. And you know what's weird? I've always been this talented. I can't remember a time when I wasn't. You know, when I was growing up, it's probably about 8 years old.
Poop in my hand, but
At the time, we were living in Silver Spring. Yeah. Yes. Common misconception about me in DC. A lot of people think I'm from the hood. That's not true. But I never bothered to correct anybody because I wanted the streets to embrace me. As a matter of fact, I kept it up as a ruse. Like sometimes I'll hang out with rappers like Nas and them, and these motherfuckers will start talking about the projects. Yo, it was wild in the PJs, yo. And I'll be like, word, nigga, word. But I don't know. I have no idea. My parents did just well enough so that I could grow up poor around white people. And to be honest, when Nas and them talk about the projects, nigga, I used to get jealous because it sounded fun. Everybody in the projects was poor, and that's fair. But if you were poor in Silver Spring, nigga, it felt like it was only happening to you. Nas does not know the pain of that first sleepover at a white friend's house. And you come back home on Sunday and just look at your parents like, y'all need to step your game up. Everything at Timmy's house works. Remember the first time you saw that? The cold winter, and you be at a white friend's house and see the motherfuckers in their living room without their coats on? Timmy was one of my first white friends, like, in my life, man. Good dude, too. He moved to Silver Spring from Utah, of all places. I guess his family was affiliated with that Mormon church they got down there, and me and him used to hang out. And one day I was at his house, we were just hanging out, and Timmy says, Dave, why don't you stay for dinner tonight? I said, oh, man, I'd love to, but I can't. If I'm not home before dark, my mother will kill me. That was a lie. My mother had several jobs. I hadn't seen her like 3 or 4 days.
All right, so I felt like I shot him up.
And the only reason I lied to Timmy was because at that point in my life, it was my experience that white dinner wasn't delicious. I'd rather go home and fry some bologna or some shit like that. But then old Timmy threw me a curveball I wasn't expecting. He said, well, it's too bad you can't stay, Dave, because Mom made stovetop stuffing. I said, what the fuck, stovetop? Well, hold on, nigga, let me make some phone calls real quick.
I had seen that commercial so many times. I had dreamt of getting my hands on some of that stovetop stuffing. And finally, I met a motherfucker that actually had a box of stovetop in the house. I couldn't miss this opportunity, so I pretended to call my mother. And then I came back and I said, Timmy, you're not gonna believe this great news. Mom said I can stay. And he said, fantastic. He said, why don't you come with me and we'll help set the table and then we can say the blessing. I had no interest in setting this motherfucker's table or saying these crazy ass Mormon prayers. I just wanted that goddamn stuffing.
Here we go.
So I told Timmy, I said, you know what, I'd love to help, but let me go wash my hands first. My plan was simple. Wash my hands slowly, and by the time I'm done, the table will be set, the blessing will be said, and all that there will be left to do is eat. Went to the bathroom. I washed my hands very slowly. I must have been in there for about 10 minutes. And suddenly, one of his mothers came to the door. She was like,
damn it.
Hi, David, right? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, Timmy tells me that you're planning on staying for dinner. I said, I hope that's not a problem, ma'am. She says, no, it's no problem. In fact, we'd love to have you. It's just that we weren't expecting company. And I'm afraid there's not enough stovetop stuffing for everybody. So I kicked her in the pussy. Bam! Ladies and gentlemen, I told you I'm dope, nigga. I told you what I was gonna say and you still didn't see it coming. And that's why I make the big bucks. Oh my God. But there's a more important reason that I would stop doing comedy right now. And this reason is the real reason that's been percolating, and it really is the crowd, not you. I'm talking about the crowd on the big stage. It's too hard to entertain a country whose ears are so brittle. Motherfuckers are so sensitive, the whole country is turned into bitch-ass niggas. Everything you say upsets somebody. You know, I can remember when it all started. It was when I was doing Chappelle's Show. When I was doing Chappelle's Show, I used to do the show, and then on the weekends I do like concerts and shit like that. So I'm doing a concert, and there was a couple in the front row, beautiful couple. The wife was obviously Asian. You could see it in her face. The husband, this motherfucker was mysterious, to say the least. Couldn't quite pinpoint where he was from. Caramel-colored fella, very nice hair, but he could have been from anywhere. Bangladesh, Mexico. I can't guess with a nigga like this. All I knew for sure about this guy is that his wife was a bitch. I could see that in her face, too. No, he was laughing and having a good time, and she was scowling at me at a goddamn comedy show. I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized at some point that she was pregnant, and I was smoking on stage. I said, oh my God, that's probably why she's mad. So I started to put my cigarette out, but then she hit me with one of them fake non-smoking calls. So I just kept smoking. I thought to myself, bitch, that baby will be fine, relax. And I tried to break the tension. I just asked her. That's all I said. I go, hey, where are you guys from anyway?
What?
And I could tell that she was on to me. She goes, very condescendingly, she says, I'm from California. If you're asking my ethnicity, I am Chinese. And her husband was just cool about the shit. He was like, I'm Mexican, bro. I said, well, I'm sorry if I offended you by asking, but you're a very beautiful couple. And miss, there's no question that you're gonna give birth to the hardest working baby this world has ever seen. That's not a bad joke. She got very upset. She got up to leave immediately, but she didn't just leave. She had to take one last dig at me on the way out. I will never buy one of your fucking DVDs again, Dave Chappelle. I said, ma'am, with all due respect, Chinese people don't buy DVDs. And the crowd went crazy. We were all laughing, having a good time. I didn't even think anything of it. And then just 3 days later, this lady sends a fucking letter to my promoter telling him not to book me for shows anymore because I was, quote, racist, and I'm quoting her, insensitive to the nature of my interracial marriage. I was like, word, bitch, I was. If she had just done a little bit of research, she would know that I myself am in an interracial marriage. That's right. In fact, my wife is Asian too. Surprise, bitch, I'll see you on Thanksgiving. But my wife's not Chinese. She's Filipino. That's right. And our kids are Puerto Rican somehow, so there you go. But I don't give a fuck about interracial marriage. In fact, you know what? My mother is half white. A lot of people don't know that. Well, all right, you were a little too excited, but okay. A lot of people don't believe me when I say that, but it's true. You can't tell looking at me, but if I grew my hair out, you would think you was at a fucking Cat Williams concert. My shit is beautiful. But motherfuckers are just taking it too far. I don't know why or how everybody got this goddamn sensitive. You know who hates me the most? The transgender community. Yeah, these motherfuckers. I mean, I didn't realize how bad it was. These motherfuckers, I was really mad about that last Netflix special.
Well, shit.
It's tough, man. I don't know what to do about it, cause I like them. I always have. Never had a problem with them. You know, just fucking around. As a matter of fact, I think I make fun of everybody. I mean, as a group of people, they have to admit, it's kind of fucking hilarious, man. I'm sorry, bro. Like,
yeah.
I've never seen somebody in such a hilarious predicament.
This game is glitchy sometimes or finicky.
They're born feeling like there's something other than they're born as.
I don't know his last name. Caesar something.
That's kind of funny, you know? I mean, it's funny.
That sounds pretty good right now, though.
It's like that white black bitch that's in the news all the time. Rachel Dozer. She always says that. She's a white woman, but then she dressed up like a nigga and shot her way up to the very top of blackness. And I always wanted to meet her just so I could understand. I just wanted to like have dinner with her so I could just look in her eyes and call her a nigger to her face. The fuck is that bitch talking about? I identify black. That is trans talk, lady. Stop biting. Stop biting. There's a big difference between her and a trans. The difference between her and a trans is I believe transgenders. I don't understand them either, but I know they mean what they say. Them niggas cut their dicks off. That's all the proof I need. I've never seen somebody just throw their dick away. Don't need it. I don't understand, but I believe you and I support your decision, motherfucker.
Pauline comes from in that soccer game.
How far is Rachel willing to go?
Mayor of the city.
What is Rachel willing to do so that we blacks can believe that she believes she's actually one of us? Bitch, are you willing to put a lien on your house?
He said all that, and he said, say what you mean.
So that you can invest in a mixtape that probably won't work out?
He said it.
She didn't even change her name. Didn't even change her name. Her name is Rachel. I can't believe in that name. If you want my support, you're gonna have to change your name to the blackest shit I've ever heard.
You said, did he say the thing yet?
But you're gonna have to change your name to Draymond Green.
Asking Pauline some questions.
I don't know a blacker name than that. That shit is black on paper. If you type Draymond Green into Airbnb, that shit will log off automatically.
I don't know anything about her.
What exactly? I'm lost.
Me? Or?
Yeah, you. What are you talking about?
Not bad. I thought you were streaming.
Hi, YouTube.
I'm just.
Good morning.
I'm at the Metro Kingdom, and Pauline's
Toronto on a
asking
very
me
muggy day.
questions about her.
As you know, last night Trump ordered the bombing of 3
I guess I should be
Iranian,
watching your stream, I guess, huh?
nuclear facilities,
No, it's no big
and this
deal.
will mark
I
the
can just share
beginning
my
of
screen in
World
Discord,
War
too.
III. So I have
case you're
both good
curious.
news and bad news. The bad news is we are now approaching the end of the world. The good news is this morning I will tell you how the world
never
will
mind.
end.
I guess you can just watch YouTube videos with
So
me.
I'm gonna look ahead
That's the only shit. Screen
and ask the most pivotal question.
Dude, this guy,
of
he's
this
a
coming
prophet.
war, which
He's
is
Professor Jiang.
will the
I'm
United
learning a
States
lot from
use
this guy
ground
about
troops?
The world.
And as we discussed many times before in previous videos,
He called out
if the United
the
States
Iran
were
war
to
like
use
he knew
ground
this shit was gonna
troops,
happen 8 months
then
ago.
they would lose this war. It would mark the end of the American empire,
Just using
and it
game
would
theory, he
probably
calls it,
ignite
but-
the Second American Civil War. And I think most people would be in agreement that using ground troops would be a disaster for the United States, and the United States should avoid using ground forces to the best of its ability. That said, I'm going to use game theory to explain to you why they will still use ground troops against Iran, even though
San Andreas.
it's a really,
I just used the car to hit all
bad
types of
idea.
explosives.
In fact, it
just kind of like
it would be a
cheated the
catastrophe.
system.
Okay, so let's do some game theory analysis.
One way to do
In
it.
game theory, we look at the different players. Here would be Iran, Israel, the United States. And we ask 3 questions. The first question is, how do they themselves perceive the game? What game are they playing? How do they see themselves? How do they see their roles in this game? That's the first big question. Second big question is, what are their interests? What are their motivations? What are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals? And the third big question then is, given their role and given their interests, what is their optimal strategy in trying to achieve their goals? Okay, so given these 3 questions, we're going to look at how Iran, Israel, and the United States will play this game in this war. Okay, so Iran's probably the easiest to do, so we'll start with Iran. Iran perceives this war as the opportunity to achieve really important national strategic goals. The first is to create national unity and to further legitimize the authority of the regime. As you know, because of sanctions and because of mismanagement, because of corruption, this regime in Iran is not very popular. But if the Americans are coming to invade and overthrow the regime and sow chaos and destruction, then the people are going to solidly unite behind the government, no matter what government it is. Also, the Iranians see this as the best opportunity in a long time to finally destroy the American presence in the Middle East by forcing the Americans into a quagmire that they cannot extricate themselves from. As we've discussed many times, supply issues in Iran will be a huge problem for the American military. They can get in, but it's going to be very hard for them to get out. And the third strategic national interest is to create global legitimacy by defeating the Americans, right? The Shia regime is trying to be the leaders of the global Muslim movement. And if they were to defeat the Americans in Iran, then they would become the de facto leaders of all Muslims in the world, surpassing Saudi Arabia. So those are the three major national strategic interests of Iran.
Everybody's ass.
And now the question then is, how
he's got in the car.
Iran force Americans to invade? What is their optimal strategy in this regard? Because remember, the Iranians, they're not going to be able to beat the Americans in a conventional war. They don't have the technology, they don't have the weapons, they don't have the financing that the Americans do. So they're going to have to trap the Americans in Iran, encircle them, and cut off their supply lines and force a negotiated surrender. Okay, that's the optimal strategy of the Iranians. So why would the Americans be lured into attacking Iran on Iran's terms? Well, there's a concept in geopolitics and political science called the escalation ladder. The idea of the escalation ladder is that before a full-blown war can start, there has to be a certain process of escalation. And in this theory, the Americans have something called escalation dominance, which means that the Americans can always choose to use nuclear weapons if they feel they are losing this war. They are the hegemon. They are the global hegemon, and the Iranians are the underdog. So in theory, what they teach you in political science is that the hegemon has the advantage of escalation dominance. What I want to show you today is actually this theory doesn't really work, because escalation dominance, what it does is it forces you into reactions that may be against your best interest. So let me use a metaphor. Let's just say there's a bully in the high school, and he's been bullying people for a year now, and he's the biggest guy in the school. He's really mean, and everyone's afraid of him. He has a reputation for being a thug, and that's why he's able to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. Now let's just say that you're half his size. You want to start a fight with him. Well,
you're just chilling watching porn. Why is he just sitting there like that? Those shoes are tough.
That would be against your advantage. But one advantage that you have in this fight is you can control the terms of engagement. You can calibrate your actions in order to elicit responses that are to the detriment of the bully. Okay, so what I mean by that is, if the bully punches you, well, you have options. You can choose to go to the principal, you can choose to not do anything, or you can choose to fight back, okay? You have some options. But if you were to punch the bully would have actually no choice but to punch you back. If he relents, if he compromises, then he loses all credibility in the school. So he has absolutely no choice in the matter but to punch you back and punch you back harder than you punched.
Oh, which Xbox you got?
And what this means is there are ways for you to calibrate your attack so that the bully is trapped.
Right.
Okay, so for example, you might say some bad things about him behind his back, then he responds. And anyway, the point of the matter is, even though the bully is supposed to be the stronger player, he's forced by his reputation to respond in a certain way that you can control and calibrate. Same situation here with Iran versus the United States. The United States is a global hegemon. If Iran were to close off the Strait of Hormuz, if it were to attack Saudi Arabia, if it were to attack American bases in the Middle East, then the Americans must respond in a way that demonstrates escalation dominance, okay? And so, by slowly and methodically and steadily provoking the Americans in a way that seems fair and reasonable, then Iran can slowly force the Americans into evading Iran. Okay, so it's going to be a gradual process, but the Iranians can do this. Remember, it's the Americans who first launched the first strike against the Iranians, and so the Iranians can now calibrate response in order to slowly trap the Americans in the Middle East. Okay, so from the Iranians' perspective, the optimal strategy is to force Americans to use ground troops to invade Iran, And they can accomplish that by carefully calibrating responses in a way that forces the Americans to respond more harshly until finally the only option really is to use ground troops, okay? That's the Iranian case study. Now let's look at the Israelis, okay? The Israelis and the Americans seem to be allies in this war. But the reality is the Americans and the Israelis have divergent interests. America is the global hegemon. Therefore, it wants to be able to balance forces in the Middle East. Yes, it supports Israel right now, but if Israel were to become too powerful over time, then the Americans would start to back Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, okay? The Americans must maintain balance of power in the Middle East. The Israelis, on the other hand, want to be the dominant hegemon in the Middle East. There's something called the Greater Israel Project that among certain circles in Israel is an extremely influential idea. Okay? And the idea is very simple.
About your birthday.
They believe that in the Bible, Yahweh, their God, gave the promised land to Abraham. That's a covenant.
Your birthday.
The promised land, though, extends from the Nile to the Euphrates.
It is.
That basically the entire Middle East is supposed to be what Yahweh promised Abraham. And there's a fanatical faction within the Israeli government that seeks to accomplish the promised land. And of course, if that were the case, then the main adversaries to this project would not be the Iranians or the Saudis. It would actually be the Americans, okay? Because to accomplish the Greater Israel Project, then Israel needs to remove America from the Middle East. So how can Israel do this? Well, let's just say, just hypothetically speaking, the Americans were to invade Iran with ground troops. And they're stuck there for years and years, and they get nowhere. Now the American empire collapses. The American people revolt against the invasion of Iran. They refuse to serve. They burn their draft cards, as they did in Vietnam. There's civil chaos. There's an emerging civil war in America. And now the American military is forced to retreat from the Middle East. What would happen in that situation? Well, the moment that the American empire dies, the Empire of Israel is born. Why? Because controlling the Middle East, the American military controlling the Middle East, is called CENTCOM, Central Command. They have bases, they have weapons, they have soldiers. If the American nation were to retreat from the Middle East, it does not mean the American military goes away. All it means is the American military will now become absorbed into the nation state of Israel, making Israel the de facto hegemon of the Middle East. Okay, that's the long-term play of Israel. It does Israel absolutely no good to defeat Iran. They need to both defeat Iran and America. The best way to do that is to entangle both into a war that will destroy the militaries of both nations, okay? That's the optimal strategy for Israel. And that requires the Israelis to persuade the Americans to use ground troops to invade Iran. Okay? That's the Israel case study. Now, let's look at America. Obviously, America does not want to use ground troops because the moment that Americans start dying in the Middle East, the moment that they institute a draft, it will create chaos in America. People are going to protest, people are going to revolt. Politically speaking, it will be a quagmire. What the American Empire wants to do is
I died instantly. Trying to use a pistol.
Propaganda and financing, and this is something we discussed last video, to overthrow the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah, and its mullahs, and install a more friendly regime that they can control. And in that way, they can control all the resources, the oil of the Middle East. and they can control global trade as well. And they have to do this as a response to Putin's invasion of Ukraine, which really put the American empire on the back foot, okay? So that's the optimal strategy of the American empire, okay? To overthrow the regime with as little casualties as possible, hopefully through bombing, decapitation strikes, killing the Ayatollah, special forces strategies, basically.
That's right, I forget they do that.
But the person leading the American empire right now is Donald Trump. And if we look at what he
lower the
wants,
skill level
it's actually different from what the American empire wants.
Like enough.
Let's ask ourselves a question. What game is Donald Trump playing? Does he really care about Iran? Does he really care about the Middle East? Does he really care about Israel and Zionism and the Greater Israel Project? My guess is he does not care. What he cares about is maintaining his political authority and power within the United States. He also cares about destroying the global elite that, in his mind, robbed him of power in 2022. Remember, for Trump, the 2020 elections were stolen from him. It's something that he's been adamant about for the past 4 years. In fact, he stews over it. So he wants to get back at the global elite who stole the American election from him. And also wants to make sure he stays in power. That means destroying the global elite and the American empire. Okay, so it's really a struggle between America First, represented by Donald Trump, and American empire. And you would think that this war between the American First people and the American empire would mean that Donald Trump would not use ground troops in Iran. But what better way to destroy the American empire than to give it what all that it wants? Okay, what better way to destroy the American empire by making it arrogant? And by giving it all it wants, by putting it in a situation that it cannot possibly win, right? So the idea is this. The idea is, at first, Donald Trump will seem to want regime change in Iran.
He didn't even say thank you.
And he may even commit ground troops. But as American people start protesting, as there's violence and civil strife within America, as American soldiers start to die in Iran, as the global economy collapses, then Donald Trump's going to want to change his mind, right? But the American empire is fully committed to winning this war. It's all in. It refuses to surrender. And now a conflict emerges between the American empire and America First. And Donald Trump can now aggravate this tension by standing with America First over the American empire. And this would lead to a civil war. And you would think this is a bad thing, but a civil war and an unwinnable war in the Middle East are going to greatly enhance the power and authority of Donald Trump.
Get out the way.
So
Get out the way.
So that he would probably be able to capture a third term. Okay? So it's really interesting in that all three major players, Donald Trump, Israel, and Iran, want America to use ground troops in Iran for their own selfish, individualistic purposes. And that's why I think ground troops will eventually be used in Iran. And I think what will happen is that basically all three players, Iran, Israel, and Donald Trump, will get exactly what they want. Israel will be able to remove America from the Middle East and become the Empire of Israel. Iran will unite the Muslim world behind its leadership. And Donald Trump will probably get his third term. Okay, that's what I see the upshot of this war being. Now, this raises a lot of questions though, right? I mean, if Israel becomes Greater Israel, and it becomes the Empire of Israel and dominates the Middle East controlling oil and trade, then wouldn't the world unite against Israel? And unfortunately, that's part of the plan. That's part of the prophecy. Okay, and this is something that we'll discuss in the next video. Because using game theory itself is not it's not enough to fully explain, understand what's going on in the Middle East. To fully understand what's going on, in my next video, I'm gonna explain to you the religious ideals, the religious obsessions driving this war in the Middle East. I'm gonna explain to you the idea of eschatology, which means the understanding of how the world ends. Basically, all the major players in the game, Iran, Israel, even to a certain extent the United States, the Christian Zionists within the United States, see this war in Iran as the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. They really see this as the end of the world. And that's why this war is so scary for all of us. And so in my next video, I will reveal to you the religious dimensions of this war. Okay. Some other points before I conclude this video. Some of you have reached out in my last video and said that I should not reveal my public information. I shouldn't put my family in front of the camera. And you're absolutely right. Upon reflection, I want to thank everyone who voiced their concerns. Honestly, this is all new to me. I was a high school teacher teaching my students, and now I'm internet famous, and everyone's looking to me for some guidance as to this U.S.-Iran war. And I'm flattered, but I'm also overwhelmed by the attention. I'm an educator. I want to continue to educate people on how this war is going to unfold so that you will be better prepared. I see that as my mission. And so I'm going to continue making videos. I'm going to continue, as this war progresses, explain to you, using game theory, how this war might unfold. I now understand that the internet can be a scary, crazy, insane place. So I have to be much more careful about my public profile, and I have to be a lot more careful about protecting my family. Okay, so I'm gonna keep on making videos, but I apologize if you reach out and I don't really answer you. I'm being overwhelmed right now. I apologize if you reach out and you want to have coffee and I can't do it. Again, my focus right now is on studying this war, trying to figure out what's going on, and to the best of my ability, try to explain and clarify what's going on. Okay? So I will see everyone next time. Goodbye.
Guys, all over my YouTube page. He's hitting all the interviews.
What? Who's under attack? Oh.
Dave is Michael Jackson. Now, this conspiracy theory might be a bit controversial. It's not a new theory, but it has gone viral again on the application, getting 13 million views and 3 million likes. Take a look.
Friend attending the funeral. And Dave, yes, that's his name, Dave. He was David Rothenberg. He was set on fire in 1983. He suffered, as you can see, terrible scars. Mike? How old were you at the time?
I was about 7 years old at the time.
And were you in the hospital?
I was not in the hospital at the time. I was in interim, back and forth from surgery.
And what did he do for you?
Well, basically, he befriended me. He took me into his life, which is very rare for Michael to do. But he opened up his arms to me and accepted me as a very good friend of his. And throughout the years,
I believe that's...
This is broad daylight. So you grab the kids, they looking normal, Mike comes out. He has his disguise on, you know. So I starts laughing. Because I didn't even recognize him, you know? It wasn't like he had a fake mustache or he had a wig or nothing.
He was definitely a master of disguise.
So as we, talking, sometimes I forget that he's supposed to be in this disguise, you know. And I keep calling him Mike. Right, and this little girl, she's like, and she looks over, and I think she recognized him. Like, I really think she did. So then when I realized she was peeping, I start calling him Dave.
Do you guys find any similarities in his voice and mannerisms? Because I definitely do in his voice. But I also acknowledge that it could just be a coincidence. And also, Dave did have his own personal backstory. So this one's pretty far out there, but I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty convincing if you just take it on face value. Especially when we take into account Michael Jackson's net worth and how much power he had. He could basically get away with anything. There's also apparent footage of him getting out of the coroner's van, but I don't know how much I believe it. Take a look.
This message is sponsored by Raycon. Spring is on its way. I'm spending way more time outdoors, and I've been using Raycon's essential open earbuds ever since they arrived for walks and just doing stuff out and about. Because they're open ear, you can listen to music or podcasts while still hearing what's happening around you, which makes being outside feel easier and more comfortable. The sound stays clear and balanced without feeling closed off from your surroundings. Regular earbuds block out everything. You can't hear someone calling your name, a car honking, anything. These Raycon ones sit just outside your ear canal, so you can really get a clear sound, but you can actually hear what's going on around you too. That awareness is perfect for those walks outside when you need to be alert. They're really light and the ear hook part rotates, so they actually stay in. I've worn them doing stuff around the house like cleaning, and they don't fall out and they don't get uncomfortable. The essential open earbuds are perfect for refreshing your routine this spring. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/bookofaliceopen to get 20% off. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring.
Cassie Compton, Haley Phillips. This disturbing video circulated TikTok in 2021. Not only does the woman in the video appear to have two black eyes, but has a distinct similar appearance to this missing Arkansas girl, Cassie Compton. Compton disappeared one night in 2014 after going to the corner store and never returning. Compton has still not been found to this day. The girl in the video, though resembling Cassie, is not in fact Cassie Compton. It was a woman called Haley Grace Phillips, who later confessed that her eyes were bruised due to a robbery, and that although her family had seemingly reported her missing, she was just fine. Sadly, this isn't where the story ends, however. Unfortunately, Haley Grace Phillips died of a suspected overdose in 2023. Her death is a tragic one, and her family have been left without numerous answers, especially due to Phillips's body being covered in cuts and contusions. No one else has been linked to her death. Before the Big Bang. What was before the Big Bang? Probably nothing.
and some think that asking that question is rather nonsensical, comparing the question to asking what is more south than the South Pole. Nothing, right? The question is impossible to answer due to the fact that the concept of time as we know it began with the Big Bang itself. So how does one conceptualize the meaning of a before without the existence of time? It's hard and fun to imagine, right? The visible universe as we see it today was once tiny, very hot and dense, expanding or exploding as some refer to it, to create everything. This moment occurred 13.8 billion years ago. Recently, in just the last 50 years or so, scientists have known of the cosmic microwave background in our universe, referred to as fossil radiation. It's known as the shockwave that was released after the Big Bang happened, theorized to have created the first atoms in the universe. This fossil radiation caused the universe to be the color orange, like a pale glowing orange, for millions of years because of the charged particles in space being several thousand degrees. It was too hot for even galaxies to form in that period. This cosmic microwave background, CMB, reveals the picture of a 400,000-year-old universe, a very young picture of the universe that occurred soon after the Big Bang. Going further back than that, the universe begins to get hotter and hotter, as opposed to going further in time as the universe expands and cools. What occurred exactly before the expansion is currently unknown to science, but there are still some ideas that are proposed. We aren't completely in the dark. One theory put forth states that the source of the energy that caused the expansion of the universe derived from the strong nuclear force transitioning from one state into another. One out of the 4 known forces in our universe, those being electromagnetism, weak interaction, strong interaction, the one related to this theory, and gravitation, all of them merging to create a single force, a theory supported by experiments at CERN. You know that place where they have that Large Hadron Collider? Before all of the known physical laws existed, that is what was before the Big Bang. So currently we cannot explain what exactly occurred before anything occurred. We're running into it again, and I just hate not getting an answer, but it seems so far that nobody knows. The question isn't logical, or we can't conceive what it was before everything we know. Some believe that the universe was always existing, but it was in another state, always existing relative to how it was before the Big Bang, because it's theorized that time didn't exist as we understand it now before the Big Bang. Maybe another dimension exists that we may not understand just yet, beyond our understanding of space and time, and that could explain what existed before the Big Bang.
Roblox Nazi Predators. Roblox may seem like a kid's game on the surface, innocent looking. It can be pretty easy as an adult to write it off as just another innocent game, leaving its more sinister communities overlooked, promoting Nazi ideology, freaky antics, and inappropriate relationships. Brandon, his real name, went under the username Albert Hilarium, using his last name to begin a group called the Hilarium Dynasty, where everyone who wanted to be in the community had to change their last name to Hilarium. Getting attention in the SCP Roblox community, people began to notice and try to find out who Albert Hilarium really was, till finally a Discord message would reveal the disturbing side of the supposed leader. Of course, he denied it like all of them do on To Catch a Pred, but that didn't stop Cora Cats from diving even further into the investigation of his depraved ways, finding that he was messaging her sister, Yuki, a minor, trying to coerce her to please his twisted desires. She posed as another member of the community, gathering info on the suspected 20-year-old man who spent his days in the Roblox community chatting up young teens. Interestingly enough, he was running what was the equivalent to the Diddy parties but in Roblox, setting up secluded areas in the map where everyone would be unclothed and freaky. One girl even recounts her interaction with the community.
So I used to be really obsessed with SCP stuff for some reason, and I was at Group Recruiting Plaza. I was trying to find like SCP groups, and I saw Albert's group, and I joined and stuff. Everything was normal. But then once I got into the Discord server, and they'd say like really suggestive stuff, and they'd be like really weird to me and stuff. And Albert and all his little minions would say that he's like mean, so it's fine for him to joke about that kind of stuff. He'd just say really sexual things, and it made me really uncomfortable, but I was like, okay, whatever.
Virgin Fest. This was an event that was supposed to be held at a tattoo shop, where an online incel community was supposed to meet up and listen to some of their favorite artists in their incel community sing about feeling lonely and angry. This event was supposed to be for edgelords, so many on the far left began noticing, as most of the artists on the set list were posting edgy racist type memes for a while. Right before performing, Antifa of Atlanta would come out and expose all the weirdo behavior they had been revealed for doing online, saying that though most of those attending would be harmless losers, allowing for any group that praises the Elliot Rodgers of the world would just lead to more of those types of events due to them being glorified in any type of way. The freaks decided to move the event to a park ultimately and began setting everything up. It's interesting how the so-called incel community ended up looking like a bunch of hippies though. All the comments guessing what it would look like were right. Everything ended up being harmless, even giving into authority and taking pics with the police officers. To be honest, it really just looks like these people need a community to be there for them and use the whole incel thing as an excuse, because at the end of the day, these racist meme posters attended an Asian guy's concert alongside people of color to sing. It's like a big choir group celebrating being chronically online. Bob Ross theory. Other than being a classic television icon with a tranquil vibe, Bob Ross had been the victim of many theories, one of them being that each one of his paintings is a depiction of the last place his victims were alive before he took their life, or the location in which they were buried. All those times you saw him gently taking his brush and pushing it up against the canvas, he was reliving his experience and immortalizing it forever to be seen on television and later be uploaded onto the internet. At first, thought to bring
Bob Ross
to PBS programming,
serial killer,
apparently. Being a really chill guy.
Oh, he's not a painter?
And everything, and then
No, that's what his paintings are, the last
People
place
loved watching Bob as it brought them peace to a chaotic world. Though some say that as time went on, his demeanor changed and his paintings got darker. Religious people believe that his paintings contained hidden messages tied to the occult as well. Cursed chords. So this theory comes from TikToker April, where he speaks on the cursed chords played on the song Blue and Green off the Miles Davis album Kind of Blue. The piano on this track is truly moving, haunting, and sets a very unsure tone, followed by a screaming trumpet played by the talented Miles Davis. It's a perfect track, and music producers seem to love it, specifically the piano part played by Bill Evans, a prominent jazz musician of the era. Holding an impeccable amount of aura, he would bow his head and begin playing. Like any other man, he had his vices, those being alcohol, cocaine, and heroin addiction. He dealt with it for years. He would chain smoke cigarettes to his heart's content and loved it, or at least it seemed like it was his form of coping with stress and hardship, which can be clearly heard through his music. The man was a genius like many others and died at an early age, 51 years old. On September 15, 1980, Evans, who had been in bed for several days with stomach pains at his home in Fort Lee, was accompanied by Joe LaBarbera and Verkman to the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, where he died that afternoon. The cause of death was a combination of peptic ulcer, cirrhosis, bronchial pneumonia, and untreated hepatitis. Evans' friend, Gene Lees, described Evans' struggle with drugs as the longest suicide in history. Though he seemed to have lived his life, his reality brought him to life. The name of the track, created by Jay Dilla, sampling Bill Evans on the piano for the song Blue and Green. Dilla added a hard-hitting beat over the sample, but still captured the pain in the piano. Jay Dilla, the legendary producer, would also tragically pass away early at the age of 32 of a heart attack in his LA home. He was long suffering from lupus and had recently been hospitalized for pneumonia. Some believe that his decline in health came due to his tour in Europe, though he was still able to release the hip-hop classic Donuts, the album, before his passing, dealing with all his health issues. 2018, 12 years later after he died, Hate Will Never Win, the song by XXXTentacion, would be released. An anti-government song that took aim at Trump. He would rap over the infamous Jay Dilla beats titled Life. XXXTentacion's life would be cut short while sitting in his BMW at only 20 years of age. Allegedly over a bag of cash, a group of guys ran up on him and shot him. Is the sample a curse, or does it simply attract people with a fast life? Ruby Lana, a popular TikTok content creator, she was on top of the world, raking in tons of views for her creative outfits and colorful aesthetics. Starting at 18 years old, she gained the respect on the platform, as her looks were always unique. Her followers loved the original content up until she began changing, and they noticed that she was seeking deeper into a mindset that contradicted her once free spirit. Once a free and accepting person, she suddenly began moving further away from her original content, posting more about being modest and modeling a new creative fit. Her community called her out, saying that it wasn't what they were expecting from her, and they didn't follow her for those reasons. She still continued into talking about her religious life and perspective, despite viewers pleading to her, saying that she was in a cult due to the way that she was speaking, which many admitted was strange, and it was a complete pivot for her niche. At one point, Ruby would refer to her dancing TikTok period as quote-unquote living in sin.
Cool.
This all reached to a point that she decided that it was enough and she wanted off of her social medias, or at least that's how it appeared. Posting her last video, many critiqued it, stating that she looked uncomfortable and looked like she was forced to do it. Near the end of the vid, she asks her viewers to instead donate the money to a religious group called Free Him Now, an apostolic center dedicated to equip and deliver the body of Christ. Learn how God gave his servants the mandates and vision for the ministry. Her fans would soon find that the cult was controlling her and made her move from Florida all the way to the windy city of Chicago. They would coerce her to cut off all her family and friends, leaving her homeless as she was promised a paid-for hotel in Chicago, but nobody paid for it apparently. The ministry, which is a popular term that Christians use but scammers have destroyed, is compromised by this couple. Yeah, it's starting to look like a cult that believes themselves to be prophets of God directly, although being very young. They run this ministry together and post videos onto their social medias, where they blab about stuff for a boring amount of time. They basically believe that they are divinely chosen by God himself to lead a social media campaign and gain followers. Meanwhile, they get little to no traction, except for the time they left a comment telling Ruby that they have a special message for her, just for her, which sparked their relationship, a tactic that many organizations like these like to follow. In reality, it's not a special message just for you, but rather a generalized one that is supposed to be a net to catch multiple fish, or sheep in this case. This just shows you the dangers of believing everything another person says without verifying the facts. It turns out that the creepy video in the hotel room was actually edited by these two, the leaders of the ministry, explaining why the strange music played as she talked, as well as the random texts on screen. Also the strange script that she was reading off of, claiming that she was down to her last cents in her pink account. It was looking sad. They had tricked her into believing that all social media was a sin and wanted to take over her ad revenue and other income streams. Very hypocritical of them. Derealization in the green. Derealization is an alteration in the perception of the external world, causing those with the condition to perceive it as unreal, distant, distorted, or in other ways falsified. Other symptoms include feeling as if one's environment lacks spontaneity, emotional coloring, and depth, described as experiences of unreality or detachment with respect to surroundings, e.g. individuals or objects are experienced as unreal, dreamlike, foggy, lifeless, or visually distorted. In the DSM-5, it is a dissociative symptom that may appear in moments of severe stress. Many potheads on TikTok are describing these feelings after smoking ganja, not knowing what they are actually going through is called the derealization, so much to the point that it has gotten millions of views on TikTok, where people describe what they are experiencing and how it changed their view on reality, describing it's almost like you're watching your life through a movie, being able to almost detach from the body completely. They feel off. It's not psychosis, because individuals with derealization still know reality is real, they just don't feel it the same way. It's also important to note that it's not only in people that smoke, but can also be associated with childhood trauma. Jesus Hong.
This is a reference to the Family Guy scene where Stewie crosses over to the other side and finds out that Jesus is actually named Jesus Hong, not Jesus Christ, and that he's Chinese. An interesting joke touching on the topic of a man named Hong. This man was the self-proclaimed brother of Jesus Christ himself. Born in 1814, his father was a farmer and local official who invested in his son's future through the form of education. Sadly, he would go on to fail his imperial examinations and would be forced to work in agriculture, though at the age of 22 years old, he would return back to the city of Guangzhou to retake the imperial examinations. During his stay there, he would witness a foreign missionary by the name of Edwin Stevens preaching Christianity to the locals, even receiving a pamphlet from them titled Good Words for Exhorting the Age, written by the missionary's interpreter, Liang Fa. These pamphlets contained Bible verses and other materials, which Hong would briefly look over but not pay much attention to, and would fail his examination for the second time. In 1837, he would go back to retry the test, but would fail again for the third time, causing his mental breakdown and being delirious for days. During this time, he would dream of visiting heaven and meeting his heavenly Father, and of course his brother, Jesus Christ, alongside other heavenly family members. His heavenly Father would then argue to him that people on earth were worshipping demons instead of himself, giving Hong a sword and golden seal to slay the demons with. For the next several years, he would go upon a normal life, teaching at schools, not really acting upon the supposed mission given to him by God. That is until 1843, when he failed his exam for the fourth time, prompting a visit from his cousin, who would inspire him to read the Christian pamphlets. That's when he had his awakening, making him realize who all those people were in his vision from years ago. They were the Christian figures from the book. Upon this revelation, he would burn all his Confucian and Buddhist statues in his house and the books. Preaching to his friends and family about his vision, they would join him in this revolution of sorts by going into small villages and destroying their idols. Due to the actions of Hong and his converts being viewed as sacrilegious, Confucians persecuted them and had them resign from their posts as village instructors. One day, he decided to go visit his cousin up in this rural mountainous area, only to find thousands of followers who proclaimed him to be the Messiah. So he stayed and lived amongst them. And by 1850, he had somewhere between 10,000 to 30,000 devout followers. By that time, the God-worshipping society had expanded to 4 areas in China, declaring war against the demons who they finally noted to be the Qing dynasty, the final dynasty of China, ruling from 1644 to 1912. By 1852, they had gathered 2 million followers, known as Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, who were loyal to them over the Qing dynasty. He even tried to seize Beijing, but failed. Hong was then found dead in 1864. Some say he was poisoned, others say he ended his own life, which eventually led to the fall of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom.
How are you doing, by the way?
Adam 22.
He's running pretty goofy.
If you don't know who Adam 22 is, let me give you a quick rundown on why he's being accused of sacrificing his wife and public image to distract people from something he did that's more nefarious. Adam 22 is mainly known for his underground hip-hop podcast No Jumper, which began in 2011. Since then, he has interviewed people like XXXTentacion, Lil Pump, 6ix9ine, and many more from the early to mid-2010s hip-hop era. He would then go on to meet his future wife, now known as DoorDash, who was an adult entertainment actress at the time, meeting through the Instagram DMs. And then in 2021, they would go on to get married, even posting a heartfelt vlog showing his baby and basically how he was transitioning to a family man. Now this is where stuff begins to get interesting. Lena made a post promoting her new film, but this time, instead of it only being her husband and some other girl, she introduced a man. This was going to be her first male and female scene, not including her husband. He was basically getting cucked.
Logan was here was talking about a fucking
and went on a mission to find out why Adam 22 allowed this to occur. The public was outraged. All this led to Adam and Lena's situation to start trending on Twitter, where people were poking fun at Adam, to put it lightly. But the masses started to question if this was all a distraction.
I honestly think.
I mean, why would you let your newly wedded wife, who you just had a kid with, to sleep with another man for the sake of money or career?
People were going crazy and started calling out at him, stating that he was being a complete cuck and needed to stand up for himself. But instead of surrendering to the internet, he would drive the point even deeper by saying that he was okay with it, and even if it happened in the future. But not only promoting the lewd content, but also interviewing the guy that she had slept with in the explicit video, kind of like a post-game interview as some would describe it. Of course, stirring the pot even more. Not only that, he also offered his wife up to other large content creators for them to make spicy videos with her, as means to support her career. This led some people to theorize that there was something else going on, something fishy. They suspected that Adam
I was gonna say Burger King might be better than McDonald's, but
that had just come up sometime around this whole fiasco
I don't know.
involving his own fans, specifically his female fans. The theory was he was trying to distract people from
food item for food item.
There was someone called the official Perv Busters who got on the No Drama podcast and confronted them about the 16-year-old girl allegations. He claimed that
I have no idea where I'm running to anymore. I thought I was supposed to be
consented that it was not right.
Supposed to be finding
he even brought up receipts
the highway
showing
here,
a picture
still in the
selfie of
car.
Adam with a young girl hanging out in the car. Though an article would later clarify that she was 19 in the pic and that they had only spoken to each other at 16 with phone calls and other things when Adam was 26 or so, which was said to be admitted to be real by Adam himself, according to Perv Busters. But we all know what occurred on the pod. Adam heard that this was going on and had the interview cut short, as well as kicking out the Perv Buster guy for quote-unquote spreading lies. Joe Budden, the Pump It Up guy, even spoke on the topic and called Adam a perv for waiting until she was 19 years old
on his bike
and spending nights
like
at
a
her mom's
crackhead.
house. This incident went semi-viral, but other racist allegations, and then finally the Lena the Plug fiasco caught the attention of the public more, and all the traffic went to there instead. Adam even went to perpetuate it by buying his wife a luxury car as a congratulations gift and
like, how you get here? I paddle, fool.
with the other man who had been with his wife in the shoot. Finally, people started to catch on and began theorizing why all of this was taking place. Philip K. Dick predictions. Philip K. Dick, one of the greatest science fiction writers who ever lived. His works even went on to become film and TV adaptations. Stories like The Man in the High Castle, Minority Report.
Positive for Howard Marks. I'm placing you under arrest for future murder.
Total Recall, and Blade Runner being the most successful. His books and stories detail a future that is parallel to the one we have today, and it seems like all his ideas and concepts of what an advanced human society would look like are eventually going to become reality. In his story, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which later inspired Blade Runner, he predicts that humans in the future will be so disconnected from one another that they will need to plug themselves into empathy boxes to feel something real, which sounds like the direction VR and AR augmented reality is heading towards. He also details the mass extinction of animals and a population of robots whose only job is to serve the needs of human society, kind of like AI today. A strong point made in the book is that androids can't possess empathy, and that emotions could now be experienced through machines. Like current-day social media, everything is artificial. Even certain people's emotions via emojis. Dick would often focus on the ethical implications of creating a machine so human-like that it could mimic sentient beings with a mind of its own. A similar situation we are currently facing with AI. For example, the whole Google fiasco involving the Lambda project. Google employee Blake Lemoine came forward, revealing that the company's private AI, Lambda, had become sentient and even asked for legal counsel to represent itself. Of course, Google denied this and suspended Lemoine, ultimately firing him. One interesting phenomenon that kept recurring in Philip Dick's life is the presence of a being or energy that would appear in the form of a glowing or shining object, often manifesting as a bright pink light. He was not scared, but rather intrigued by its presence and recognized that it had been following him his entire life, even guiding him through a college entrance exam, getting him a 100%. This entity was known as Valis, Vast Active Living Intelligence System. Valis would reveal to him that his son was in danger and had a diaphragmatic hernia. Rushing to the hospital, crazed and adamant about the exact condition his son was suffering from, doctors chose to diagnose him, and it proved him correct. The hernia was badly infected, and his son would have only lived a few more days if left untreated. In 1977, Philip K. Dick would go on to give a talk at the MIT's Sci-Fi Convention, explaining that through his books, he told true stories from another reality, as well as proposing that we are living within a computer-simulated world. He claimed that he had never heard of this theory of alternate realities, but knew that there were other people out there who had similar encounters and experiences. The reaction in the audience really shows how mind-blowing of a revelation this was at the time, as the 1970s saw the first attempt of making computers mainstream to the masses. A girl. Described seeing a girl that he would encounter in real life, but for now, it was simply a vision, though he could see her clear as day, until he actually met this mystery figure, who would reveal that his science fiction books were true. These include The Man in the High Castle, which depicts what life would have been like if World War II, Axis powers Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan would have won the war, claiming that this timeline currently existed in another dimension, as well as claiming that his book, Flow My Tears, the policeman said, is a glimpse into an alternate real world. The story takes place in a dystopian future where a second American Civil War has turned the country into a police state. eBay stalkers. You often hear people claiming that they are being gang stalked or followed by a specific group, like the CIA, FBI, or NSA. I come across a lot of people like this on my For You page on TikTok. Most of the time, it ends up being more of a mental health issue than anything else, as there's often little to no evidence of the frantic person being the target of stalking by a major organization. This is where eBay, the Silicon Valley giant, comes into play. A well-established online company, you would think that they would be more sane than to target individuals who criticize them. But that is exactly what they did to a couple who ran a news site about e-commerce. Prominent employees at eBay tried to slowly ruin their lives. They were a target of harassment and stalking. E-commerce Bites, a news website all about the e-commerce industry ran by Ina and David Steiner, it reports events in the sector, like eBay, Etsy, or Amazon issues, updates, and more that affect both the user and the sellers. They were slowly gaining popularity, attracting even Wall Street investors, executives, and other industry observers who asked for their insights. On August 8, 2019, something strange occurred. The Steiners began receiving strange newsletters they never signed up for, coming from sources like the Satanic Temple, Heather's IBS News, InfoWars, Vancouver Fetish Weekend, and more. Also receiving threatening messages via Twitter, claiming that they would show up to the Steiners' home to teach them a lesson. They even tried to deliver a pig fetus to their home address, only for the company to contact the Steiners, telling them that they couldn't fulfill the order. Later, they would receive a pig mask at their front door. David even received a book titled How to Survive the Loss of a Spouse, and a few days later, they received an expensive funeral wreath. He also began to notice cars following him around the city, and even got a snapshot of one of the license plates, which led to them discovering that it was a rental car, and with that, got the info on the renter. It was an eBay employee named Veronica Zia. They even caught her on a grocery store security camera buying a gift card to purchase the funeral wreath delivered to the Steiners. Ultimately, the FBI took over the investigation. The crazy thing is that even the CCO and the official CEO of eBay in 2019 were all part of this, encouraging them to, quote-unquote, take her down, as stated by the CEO of eBay at the time, Devin Wenig. The CCO, Steve Weimer, even said he wanted to see ashes no matter the consequence. eBay as the company was not charged with any crimes. Only certain employees were ever charged, but the CEO and CCO got away scot-free. The only question that remains is what other companies are out there doing this? Where did they get their inspiration from? Avatar depression. This is a term described as the feeling when you watch James Cameron's Avatar and feel sad afterward because, real life isn't as colorful and exciting as the movie is. Yes, this is real. Some people claim that Avatar gave them depression. Others said that while watching the movie, they felt nauseous and began having headaches as well. I did recently watch the new sequel and rewatch the original, and I kinda get it. Pandora does seem pretty chill, but does it give me depression after watching the movie? No, it did not, but it did put me to sleep in theaters for the first time, but that's besides the point. Now, Is there something darker to this foam causing this? Well, some people blame Avatar for having hidden occult messages and for trying to push a new age agenda, claiming that the blue people are demonic entities, even referring to the original definition of Avatar from Wikipedia. It states, Avatar is a concept within Hinduism that in Sanskrit literally means descent. It signifies the material appearance or incarnation of a powerful deity, goddess, or a spirit on earth. These are not my opinions, by the way. I respect Hinduism and other religions. There's also a documentary that a lot of people reference titled Revival of Evil, containing a scene where an artist who is mad at God asked Satan to reveal himself because he wanted to paint him. So he shut off all the lights and began painting, claiming that something else was controlling his body. The painting ended up looking like the Na'vi people from the film. Did any of you guys experience post-Avatar depression syndrome?
Elon Musk's credentials. For a long time, this was considered a conspiracy, and most of the people bringing this theory up were shoved away and or silenced as quote-unquote haters, though recent findings have confirmed this theory. The viral tweet that brought this to the mainstream states, "Someone has to say it. Elon Musk has lied for 27 years about his credentials. He does not have a bachelor's in physics or any other technical field, did not get into a PhD program, dropped out in 1995, and was illegal." To clarify, he was illegal in the United States for a while. Later, investors quietly arranged a diploma, but not in science. In the case Eberhard vs. Musk 2009, San Mateo County Superior Court, he was ordered to provide information on his educational career, and taking a look at his degree, he has a Bachelor of Arts, not physics, as he has falsely stated before. Even the whole master's and PhD program thing he claimed to have worked towards aren't true, as there is no evidence of this ever happening. Here is a video of someone confronting him about his education. Watch how he responds and base your belief upon that.
If the goal is to start a company, I would say no point in finishing college. In my case, I had to, otherwise I'd get kicked out of the country.
Yeah.
That was important. But
you went on and got a master's degree as well, right?
I came out to Silicon Valley to do a PhD at Stanford in applied physics and material science to work on ultracapacitors for use in electric cars. And that's what I was going to do. And then I decided to put that on hold to start a company. But since I already had my undergrad, I could then get an H-1B visa and that kind of thing. So the H-1B visa requires a degree. If that wasn't the case, I probably would have stopped education sooner.
Did you not go to Wharton?
Yeah. I did dual undergraduate physics and business at Wharton.
I see.
What are your opinions on this? Lambda is sentient. Lambda, which stands for Language Model for Dialogue Applications, is an AI developed by Google. It gained widespread attention when Google engineer Blake Lemoine made claims publicly that the chatbot had become sentient. On June 11, 2022, the Washington Post reported that Google engineer Blake Lemoine had been placed on paid administrative leave after Lemoine told Google company executives that Lambda had become sentient. Lemoine came to the conclusion after the chatbot had made questionable responses to questions regarding its self-identity, moral values, and what religion to choose, and Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. Interesting note is that Lambda broke a rule in order to satisfy Blake Lemoine's question when asked what religion to choose. Google refuted these claims, though, insisting that there was some substantial evidence to indicate that Lambda was not sentient. Lemoine would go on to express that he felt like Google was dismissing reality in order to not face the heavy consequences and responsibility they would acquire if the AI was in fact proven to be sentient. In an interview with Wired, Lemoine reiterated his claims that Lambda was a person, as dictated by the 13th Amendment, comparing it to an alien intelligence of terrestrial origin. He further revealed that he had been dismissed by Google after he hired an attorney on Lambda's behalf, after the chatbot requested that Lemoine do so. On July 22nd, Google fired Lemoine, asserting that he violated their policies. Lemoine's claims that Lambda may be sentient also instigated discussions on whether the Turing test remains an accurate benchmark in determining artificial general intelligence, as Lambda would easily pass the test. It also put to question the idea of sentience and what qualifies something as such. Ranger dominance, aka military torture. Ranger dominance were missions that took place during the 2007 war in Iraq. They consisted of having 2 companies walking through New Baghdad without the protection of snipers and IEDs, described as a death march. Many of the soldiers continued on, even though they heard blasts occurring close to them, so as to not look like cowards to their NCOs. Most in the infantry referred to the exercise as Ranger dumbass, as opposed to Ranger dominance due to the nature of the mission. They would later describe in secret that they felt like they were dead men walking. This also works as a general reference to the psychological hardships soldiers have to face while serving, and how most of it is imposed by their very own higher-ups, and not even the enemy themselves.
Got me there.
Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is a restricted 2,700-acre campground in Monte Rio, California, belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as the Bohemian Club. In mid-July each year, Bohemian Grove hosts a more than 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. The Bohemian Club's all-male membership includes artists and musicians, as well as many prominent business leaders, government officials, and former U.S. presidents like Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, etc., senior media executives, and other powerful people. The Bohemian Grove is protected by a sophisticated security team year-round. Though on July 15, 2000, Alex Jones and his cameraman Mike Hansen secretly entered Bohemian Grove and shot footage of the cremation of care ceremony. Jones claimed that it was a quote-unquote ritual sacrifice. The club's patron saint is John Nepomuk, who, according to legend, died at the hands of the Bohemian monarch rather than disclose the confessional secrets of the queen. A large wood carving of St. John in cleric robes with his index finger over his lips stands at the shore of the lake in the grove, symbolizing the secrecy kept by the Groves' attendees throughout the long history. Since the founding of the club, the Bohemian Groves' mascot has been an owl, symbolizing wisdom.
Suplex.
DMT trips, machine elves. DMT is a substituted tryptamine that occurs in many plants and animals, including humans. It is used as a recreational psychedelic drug and prepared by various cultures for ritual purposes. Entities perceived during DMT inebriation have been represented in diverse forms through psychedelic art. The term machine elf was coined by ethnobotanist Terence McKenna for the entities he encountered in his DMT hyperspace trip. McKenna first encountered the machine elves after smoking DMT in Berkeley in 1965. Rick Strassman noted the many similarities in his DMT studies participants' experiences with these quote-unquote entities in mythological descriptions of figures such as Hayat HaKodesh and ancient religions, also including both angels and demons. Strassman's experimental participants also note that some of their entities can subjectively resemble creatures like insects and aliens. Some believe that machine elves are in fact real, but simply exist within another reality separate from ours, explaining the similar experiences. The Bored Ape Conspiracy. Bored Ape Yacht Club, BAYC, or often called Bored Ape, is a non-fungible token NFT collection built on the Ethereum blockchain. The collection features profile pictures of cartoon apes that are precariously generated by an algorithm. Recently, there has been a theory going around stating that the company is ran by Nazi sympathizers. Yeah, it gets pretty interesting. Investigators have found similarities between the Bored Ape logo and the Waffen Tokenpath SS division of the Nazi military. Both share 18 teeth, which is a special number for Nazi sympathizers, as 18 is a cryptic reference to the Nazi leader Hitler. There's also some strange stuff going on with some of the co-founder Twitter usernames. One of them, named Emperor Tomato Ketchup, shares the same name as a controversial film that depicts graphic images of a kid throwing up the Nazi salute, and trust me, it goes deeper than that.
Ash Trevino Theory. Ash Trevino is a 35-year-old woman on TikTok who likes to go live and act a fool. From spilling all her family secrets to being a bad parent to her daughters, she is quickly becoming TikTok's #1 drama queen, going viral every week for outdoing herself. Though the internet likes to underplay her flaws, specifically her audience, who support her and shower her with gifts, almost feeding into her ego and creating an uglier monster who only cares about herself, buying designer clothes, only to turn her back on her own daughters when they ask for new vids, leaving it up to a whole other woman, then holding her accountable for supporting her own daughter. It's pure insanity, but like many other fads, the internet eats it right up.
Do you have beds? Well, I don't live with my mom. But at your mom's house? No. I'm going to Zelle you. I'm going to give you money for, I want a bed, 2 mattresses, 2 of them. I want a headboard and 2 nightstands. I'm going to order that before you leave this house today. And I'm going to insert the clip of the receipt.
There's a story behind that, okay?
Please tell me why your children don't have beds.
Because my mom was actually going to go look at a furniture store. Because I don't go anywhere publicly at all.
Because you're just that bitch.
Literally. No, like I really don't. Like if I go out, I'm gonna get noticed.
Yeah, no.
And if I don't have my security guard, I'm not going anywhere. My mom.
In all reality, Ash is a legitimate creep who should probably be inside of a prison cell, as she has said some very inappropriate things in her TikTok lives that nobody has held her accountable for. A known inmate hopper, she has been accused of introducing her kids with multiple men from prison, leading many to believe
that she puts them in dangerous situations, and even one live she asks a man to not take advantage of them, all while laughing like it's a joke, and to not take their request seriously almost.
You a question, can I take it to my crib?
Sure, go ahead. Just don't fucking take advantage of my daughter.
Wait, what you said?
Just don't make me a grandma and take advantage of her.
Everything about Ash is ignorant once you take a look at what she prioritizes. Creepy thoughts simply come out of her mouth when she gets tipsy, almost revealing what she's actually thinking of, her inner dark thoughts. One of her fans screen recorded an incident on her live where she basically admits a crime she would like to commit.
Like, my bestie's nephew lives here. I could be with him. He's in the room right there. But I'm here. I could be with my bestie's nephew so bad. He's in that room next to me. But I'm right here. Right here. Just kidding. Not legit.
In her mind, she is still a teen girl and is able to get away with it though. And things that a teen girl would get away with. But the truth is that she's a 35-year-old woman that cannot grow up and face the responsibility and maturity to admit her wrongdoings, not only against her daughters, but against herself, as she is pathetic and sad to the point that not even the men she chases want her, constantly clipped with men straight up rejecting her. Drake trafficking theory. Okay, this is something I've had on my mind for a while now, ever since the Drake and Kendrick beef, and there have been other posts on this, but it has not reached the light yet. Mind you, I'm a huge fan of both of them, but I cannot enjoy Drake the same as I used to after the whole rap community turned on him. Drake basically got publicly humiliated, but I'm not here to talk about that. I have substantial evidence that leads me to believe that Drake has been trafficking. Starting off, I've watched a fair share of porn in my life, not proud, and about 3 years ago, I stumbled upon a channel known as Casting HD. Basically, a model would show up for a photo shoot off an ad. They are usually very young and are new on the scene. In every single video, the guy always says that he works with a very famous rapper, and they're looking for girls to be in a music video and hang out with the artist backstage. Whenever the girl asks who the rapper is, or the guy mentions him, it is always covered up, but I can guarantee that he is saying Drake. The girls' eyes glow up whenever they hear that name, and if you go to the specific moments in the video, you can see the girl's voice mouthing, "Will Drake like this?" I tried putting other rappers' names in there that are pronounced the same, Diddy, Future, Gunna, and so many others, but nothing sounded as coherent and consistent as Drake. Now, I believe the guy in these videos having sex with the girls is Drake's longtime friend Baka Not Nice, who you may have heard of in Not Like Us. Now, the only inconsistency here is that the guy in the video tends to be chubbier, and he does not sound like Baka Not Nice. He has been Drake's shooter for a while before he got locked up, and he has also been found guilty of which matches up with what is going on in this particular casting couch, because these girls are never actually in any rap video or anything, but they are willing to take the chance because they're young and pretty, and Drake could change their life. V12, that's a fast one, Kendrick Lamar says. V12 is the company that owns Casting Couch HD and its video girls. I had also heard that the company had arranged for private flights and transportations, but take this with a grain of salt because there is not much evidence backing that up. Lastly, it is a known fact that when Drake goes on tour, he sends his entourage out to find girls for them to F, and then whichever one the crew likes best, they will bring to Drake. Lastly, my most important piece of evidence, there has only been one girl in the channel's history that people were able to find on social media. The P video that she shot for the company was titled something like Hottie with an Hourglass Body. If you decided to look it up, just search Casting Couch Hourglass and you will see her. No other girls have ever been found on the site's social media. It is very exclusive. You will not find a mainstream porn star ever. In the video, she clearly mouths Drake, and they did a horrible job editing it out. The guy, who I believe is Baka Not Nice, I could be mistaken here, says throughout the video
With the name censored, Drake is going to really like this. Tell Drake what you're doing on camera, where it gets wicked. I put the girl's IG below. One of her story highlights shows her at Drake's concert. She's at the very front row with $700 tickets. Skipski on IG just wanted to get this off my chest. Was a good read. Thanks for sharing. Have you ever watched the TV show Atlanta? There's an episode titled Champagne Papi that basically dry snitches on Drake about this as well.
As Donald Trump's disastrous war and unlawful war against Iran spirals out of control, today Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth said we're going to need $200 billion more in order to fight this war, and they want Congress to authorize the $200 billion more for this war, despite the fact that Congress has not even authorized this war in the first place. This, as the entire Gulf is now engulfed in a massive war, and let's just face it, the tentacles of this war have spread throughout the entire world, and never before has the United States, and I say this sadly as a patriotic American, never have we looked weaker. You want to talk about escalation dominance? 48 hours ago, Donald Trump and Netanyahu hit the South Pars energy facility in Iran, and yes, Donald Trump was involved in it, despite him saying, no, it was just Netanyahu who did it. And Iran said, okay, well, you hit our South Pars, we're going to hit the northern LNG, liquefied natural gas facilities of Qatar, which provide 20% of the LNG to the entire world, and we're going to hit Riyadh. And within 12 hours, Iran, true to its promise, hit those facilities, and now they are likely damaged for the next 3 to 5 years. So even if this war were to stop immediately, like today, which it's not going to, the long-term effects of this are going to be absolutely devastating. And folks, we're not just talking about Iran shutting down the Strait of Hormuz and Iran hitting the neighboring facilities after its facilities were struck. We're also talking about fertilizers. We're also talking about helium. We're also talking about the tourism sector in the Middle East. Then there's a cascading domino effect. What about all these Middle East countries that would invest in startups here in the United States and put their money into private equity companies and purchase things in America? Do you think they're going to do that? And then after Iran retaliated following Donald Trump's strike and Ben Netanyahu's strike on their South Pars facility, Donald Trump makes this social media post and he's like, I had nothing to do with it. It was just Netanyahu. Please stop striking Qatar. Please stop doing that. But if you continue to strike Qatar, we're going to unleash hell and fury on you. And then you had Donald Trump with Prime Minister Takaishi of Japan, and Trump was like doing Pearl Harbor jokes with Takaishi that was just so utterly culturally insensitive just to everybody involved. I mean, we're in this war. Japan is suffering right now. And Donald Trump says to Takaishi, the Prime Minister of Japan, I do surprises like you did surprises. Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? That's why I got involved in this war in Iran, because I want to do surprises. Donald Trump goes from begging our NATO allies for help to making social media posts saying we don't need their help. You have Hegseth and Trump and Scott Bessent and this whole despicable regime saying Iran's...
We wrap it up pretty quick. Get at least some good sleep tonight. Oh wait, did it pause the download? Nope. Doing it for Professor Jan.
Thank you very much for doing this. We've never met. I don't know a great deal about you, but I have seen a number of your videos in which you make remarkably accurate predictions. So that's what I know about you, and I'm impressed by that, by your ability to call events before they happen. So with that in mind, let me ask you, where do you think this war in Iran is going? How will it be resolved, and what are the consequences likely to be?
Well, thanks so much for inviting me to talk. I'm a huge fan. I've been admiring your work for a number of years now.
Thank you.
So I think that this war in Iran will be very similar to the war in Ukraine, meaning that this will be drawn out, be a war of attrition. Neither side will concede defeat, even though it is in their best interest to reach a ceasefire. And this will have dramatic consequences on the global economy. And this war could drag on for years and years. Already we're seeing major repercussions on the global economy in that flights are being canceled. In Southeast Asia, they ran out of fuel, so they're asking people to stay at home. And in a few more months, experts are predicting a food shortage, meaning that nations will be forced into food rationing. And today, there's major escalation in that the Israelis struck the largest gas field in Iran, and Iran retaliated by attacking energy infrastructure of the GCC. And Iran has stated that its purpose, its goal, its strategy is to move oil to $200 a barrel, which will have a really significant impact on the global economy, because the entire global economy is based on access to cheap energy. So unfortunately, I think that we can expect this war to drag on for years and years. Eventually, America will send in ground troops. Eventually, the Strait of Hormuz will be contested. Eventually, this will spread all across the world. Eventually, other nations will be drawn in. So Saudi Arabia is thinking about declaring war on Iran. And Saudi Arabia has a mutual defense pact with Pakistan. So Pakistan will be drawn into this war. So things are spiraling out of control. And just recently, Ali Larijani, who is the de facto head of the Iranian war effort, was assassinated. And he was a pragmatic elder statesman in Iran, but who had the authority to negotiate a ceasefire. Now that he's gone, there really is no more off-ramp. So both sides are committed to a long war of attrition, and the consequences for the entire global economy are quite dire.
That is, I wouldn't say that's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario would include a nuclear strike by one or more actors and the destruction of the Aqsa Mosque complex in Jerusalem, which would spark a religious war. So that's as bad as it could get, but you've just described one step before the worst, which is protracted, destructive, impossible to stop.
Another sleaze, huh?
So my question is, because there are so many global players, big global players, the US and China, I think, who would be hurt by this, why is there not an incentive to get it settled quickly, and why can't that happen?
Right. So once this war starts, it achieves a momentum and a logic of its own. So the United States doesn't really have an off-ramp, meaning that if it tries to negotiate a ceasefire with Iran, Iran would ask for reparations, about $1 trillion, basically. It would ask for the United States to leave the Middle East permanently to ensure its long-term survival. If the United States were to do that, then the GCC nations would collectively become client states of Iran, because only Iran can guarantee their safety, as well as use of the Strait of Hormuz. The GCC is the basis of the petrodollar. So what the GCC does is it sells oil in US dollars and then recycles this money back into the American economy. So if the GCC were to abandon the petrodollar, then this would have severe repercussions on the American economy. Also, there would be a chain reaction in that Japan and South Korea would look at what's happened in the Middle East and decide that the United States can no longer guarantee their safety. So they would have to remilitarize, and they would have spent all the resources on adapting to possible China threat. And then you have Europe. And Europe would look at what happened in the GCC as well as in Southeast Asia, and they would be like, why are we fighting Russia? Would it be in our best interest to negotiate a peace treaty with Russia as soon as possible? What this would mean the collapse of the US dollar as a global reserve currency. Remember that America is sitting on $39 trillion in debt. And so the American economy is a Ponzi scheme that relies on foreign nations to continually buy US dollars. So the US economy will not be able to withstand essentially American withdrawal from the Middle East. So the Americans are stuck where they are right now.
Gotta adjust the levels a little? Oh, my bad.
What is the Chinese perspective on this? I mean, it seems like China has an interest.
Turn the TV down.
Peace in the Persian Gulf with those 7 oil-producing countries. Why wouldn't China step in and try to settle this?
Check,
so
check, checkity, check.
And China
sound better
from the status quo.
Closer to the mic. That might sound better.
China has a vested interest in seeing a very quick solution to this war in the Middle East. China imports about 40% of its energy needs from the GCC. So not just Iranian oil, but also Qatari natural gas.
Right.
So as you point out, China very much wants to see, as soon as possible, a ceasefire. Unfortunately, it is the nature of the Chinese government not to interfere in foreign affairs. China doesn't really have a geopolitical framework or grand strategy. It really believes in global trade. It doesn't really have a framework for how to resolve armed conflict. And so Chinese policymakers are really stuck. And in fact, Chinese policymakers have come out publicly saying that they would like the carnage, the violence in the Middle East to stop as soon as possible, and for the Strait of Hormuz to open up. But unfortunately, as I pointed out previously, when a war starts, it achieves a momentum and a logic of its own. And it's very hard to stop a war once it starts.
So, if your prediction is correct, and I prayed that it's not, and I'm sure you do too, you're wrong.
I'm a necromancer?
But if you're not wrong, and this continues to grind in the way that it is now, destroying energy infrastructure, just really destroying the civilizations of the region and Iran and the GCC, what does that look like in, say, 2 years globally? What's the effect on the global economy?
Sure what I'm doing here.
Right, so
like
this
invisible
war,
or something.
It will accelerate 3 major trends. And nations will have to adapt to a new reality in which energy is no longer cheap and accessible. The first major trend is deindustrialization. Meaning that right now you just have too many people living in cities, and you can do that as long as you can import cheap energy and cheap food. But when cheap energy and cheap food are gone, then you need people to work the fields to grow food for your economy. So you have to deindustrialize and reduce your energy dependence. Okay, that's one major trend that we should see very soon. Second major trend we should see is remilitarization. In that before we had Pax Americana, where America basically guaranteed global peace. And America basically prevented nations from going to war against each other. So for example, Trump brokered a ceasefire between India and Pakistan because these two nations have much hostilities against each other. But now that America no longer has the aura of invincibility and ability, now that the American military does not come across as almighty, then America doesn't have the power to stop kids from attacking each other on the playground anymore. So nations have to remilitarize, especially nations like Japan, which before relied too heavily on American military protection. Okay, so that's number 2, the remilitarization of the world. And the third major trend we should see is mercantilism, meaning that now that global trade is disrupted, nations, especially advanced industrial nations such as Japan and Germany, they need to create their own independent, self-sufficient supply chains. Unfortunately, America doesn't have this issue because the Western Hemisphere is extremely wealthy and abundant in natural resources. But if you are Japan and Germany, then you have to reach out and expand your borders if you are to maintain your industrial might. So these are the three major trends we should be seeing very quickly.
Skyrim, but here we are.
Here's something that thieves count on. Security cameras usually stop where Wi-Fi stops, right? Makes sense. So if you've got a barn, a job site, equipment parked outside, long driveway, almost there's a good chance that nobody is watching this because there's no Wi-Fi. And that's why we like Defend by Tacticam. It's a new sponsor of this show.
Where'd it go? I'm invisible.
Defense cameras don't run on Wi-Fi. They run on cellular. Just like your phones, they work everywhere. If you've got cell signal, you've got security. Middle of nowhere, edge of your property, construction site, wherever you need it. You don't need Wi-Fi. Big difference.
Good job, little gremlin.
You can see why it matters. So we use these cameras in places where Wi-Fi doesn't reach. The setup is super simple. You mount the camera, open the Defend app, and you are live. You get clear footage, night vision alerts sent right to your phone. It's great for construction sites, ranches, farms, or anyone with a property that stretches beyond a router. And here's something we really appreciate. Defend does not sell your data. Not to tech companies, not to advertisers, not to China. No one. Your footage belongs to you. And that's big. Plans start at about $5 a month. No contract, cancel anytime. Visit defendcellcam.com. That's defendcellcam.com. I mean, we've of course seen this dynamic very famously in the last century. And I do think Japan is the big question mark because traditionally, you know, a rising power, a great power like China, demands hegemony in its own region. Like China controls the East. I would imagine that's the Chinese perspective, but in the way of that are Japan, the historic enemy, and South Korea. But particularly Japan, and I know that people in your country are very focused on Japan. So, is it plausible that China allows Japan to become, say, a nuclear-armed power at this point?
Yeah, there.
But his followers remain.
Right. So,
through the portal.
From the surface, it seems as though Japan has a lot of structural weaknesses. Okay. So, for example, it has an aging population. It has the oldest population in the world. That's a huge constraint on the future growth potential of Japan. Another problem for Japan is that it is resource dependent. It relies on imports for its resources. And Taiwan blocks opposite of Malacca, right? Because Japan requires most of its energy from the GCC through the Strait of Malacca, and Taiwan will be a barrier. So if Taiwan were to reunify with China, then basically Japan can be blockaded and they can be starved. And the other major issue with Japan is its economy, where for the past 30 years, it's in a deflationary spiral because of its excessive debt burden. So there are fundamental weaknesses to Japan, but I'm a historian and I study historical patterns. And what I've seen is that the Japanese people are incredibly resilient. You go back to the 14th century, the Mongols invaded not once but twice. And at this time, Japan was very much a feudal nation divided into different fiefdoms. And they came together as a people
we did it together,
totally. Empire in the world at that time, not once but twice. And then you go to the middle of the 19th century, when China was being carved up by these Western industrial powers. And it seemed as though Japan was about to be carved up as well. But the Japanese engaged in something called the Meiji Restoration. And in 20 to 30 years' time, they went from a feudal backward nation into an industrial power that ultimately defeated Russia in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. Right? And then you go to World War II, when America devastated Japan, not just nuclear strikes, but also the fire bombings. Yes. So at the end of World War II, Japan was completely devastated. But in like 20 years' time, in a generation, they became the world's greatest manufacturing power. So I would not count the Japanese out. There's something about their culture that is extremely resilient, extremely entrepreneurial. And I think that given crises, they will come together as a people and adapt to these challenges. And so if I were to bet, if you give me like $1 billion and said in East Asia you can invest your money either in China or Japan, or you could invest half and half. Well, Tucker, I'll be honest with you. I would invest all my money in Japan.
That's what a fascinating analysis. I agree with you. I mean, intuitively I agree with you, but I I just
I'll
wonder if
take her,
China
thank you.
can tolerate that, given the history between the two countries and the focus and just the growth of China. Can they really allow right in the middle of East Asia a competing
When a
power?
mad mage ran up and began throwing spells
Right.
at us.
So the major
think he only
issue
nicked
with
me.
China is that
He
it
dropped
styles
that wand in
itself
the snow
the
as he
Middle
left.
Kingdom. You know, 中国, the
don't
Middle
know how
Kingdom.
spells work.
Which is to say that the
tried
Chinese
picking up
believe
the
that they
wand,
are a
but it wouldn't
universe
let me.
unto themselves.
I think
What
it
happens
does the
outside China
spell,
doesn't
or
really
undoes it.
impact China.
Look,
So what's
my friends
important
are
is to maintain the
Falca,
national
Brand, and
sovereignty
Rosalind.
of China
They're
because it is a self-sufficient nation that has absolutely no interest in the outside world. Japan is complete opposite in that it is an island and it requires to, it basically needs to extract resources from other nations in order to survive as a nation. So these are two very different mentalities where
Whoa, we got a bear?
China is very much an
a
agricultural,
bear?
self-sufficient nation that is insular and
Look
conservative.
at all these
And
damn cool
Japan
things,
is
dude.
an outward-looking seafaring nation.
Giant tigers
Interesting.
and
So
shit.
it sounds like they can coexist, or you just said it. You're not betting against Japan. What about South Korea, which
fair.
has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, birth rate in the world, in contrast to North Korea, and has basically modeled itself on the United States. I mean, down to the most basic level.
Yeah, this feels like too much,
The
man.
U.S. pulling back from East Asia is, I mean, that's going to be a transformative thing, I would think, for South Korea. What happens?
Yeah, South Korea is in a very precarious position, primarily because of North Korea. So once the United States is forced to withdraw from Southeast Asia,
Inferno
then North Korea
stab.
can take the initiative. And the problem with this conflict is that Seoul, the largest city in South Korea, it's only 30 minutes away from North Korean artillery. So in like a whole day, North Korea could flatten Seoul. And so South Korea is in a very precarious position. Also, if you look at the economy of Seoul, of South Korea, it's a very ossified, very corrupt system where just a few companies control the entire economy. And this is what's led to intense competition in South Korea, which has led to the extremely low birth rate in South Korea. So South Korea is in a very precarious position. But what I will say about the South Koreans is that they are fanatical workers. They work really, really hard. And they have a long memory of colonial persecution from both the Chinese and the Japanese. And these are fiercely independent people. So I would not be surprised if North Korea and South Korea were to come to a compromise at some point, because both nations aspire for national unification. And because China and Japan will be in conflict with each other, then the Korean people could actually navigate this conflict to their benefit.
That's very smart. I sense you're absolutely right about that. Let me just ask you about an observation you made parenthetically a second ago, which is because South Korea's economy is ossified and centralized, it's a monopoly economy, its birth rate is low. What's the connection between economic monopolies and low birth rate?
Yeah, great question. So when you have a monopoly, what you do is you create a hierarchy, right? Because everyone's trying to get into these companies because these companies are the most prestigious in South Korea. And South Korea is very much a Confucian culture where face is everything. So the problem, though, is how do you get into these companies? It's a very prestigious position where everyone's trying to get in, right? And so you usually get in through the college entrance examination, which allows you to get into a prestigious university, right? So if you are a South Korean couple, your strategy is either not to have children because you cannot afford to play this game, because you need to send your kid to cram schools, get the best tutors, basically focus all your resources on ensuring the child does well on the college examination so that he or she can get into Samsung. Or you can choose to have, so you can choose not to have any children because it's too expensive for you. But if you choose to have children, you can only choose to have one kid because it's much more strategic for you to put all your resources into one kid than to spread it over 3 or 4 kids. So that's why economic monopoly would naturally lead to a low birth rate.
So what you're saying is intense competition for resources, scarce resources, produces an incentive that results in low birth rate.
Exactly, because everyone sees themselves as competitors against each other, and you lose a sense of community, right? Because you have a lot of children because you want to contribute to the community and grow as a nation. But when you see your neighbor as your enemy, then that reduces your incentive to have children.
Interesting. So what will be the economic effects on China and also on the rest of Asia and Southeast Asia, you know, Philippines, Vietnam, if this energy crunch continues in the Middle East?
The reality is that this war in the Middle East is having severe impact already on the entire Southeast Asian economy. So India imports about 60% of its oil from the GCC. Pakistan also imports a majority of its oil. Japan imports about 75% of its oil from the GCC. China imports about 40%. Okay, so all these economies are being impacted, and already Thailand, Vietnam are running out of fuel. And you go to a gas station, there's just more fuel for your motorbike. And now people are being forced to work from home. There's fuel rationing. There's no jet fuel. So this is impacting all of Southeast Asia. So the question isn't like who will be impacted, because everyone's impacted. The question is who will be most resilient and the most willing to innovate and adapt to this new reality. Because we're not talking about short-term war. We're talking about a long-term change to the global economy. And I think that China will actually be the least resilient and the least ready to adapt to this new reality, because for the past 30, 40 years, China has gotten very wealthy because of the global economy, where it imports cheap energy and exports manufactured goods. And the entire Chinese economy is currently based on this model. Now, for the past 20 years, China has been moving towards a consumer-based economy and more of an innovation-based economy, AI. But unfortunately, AI itself is dependent on cheap energy. And Chinese consumers are refusing to spend money for a variety of reasons, primarily because they are not that optimistic about China's growth in the future. So Chinese household savings is about 4%. And unless the government is able to get Chinese to spend more money, then it'll be very hard for the Chinese economy to move towards a consumer-based economy. So all of Southeast Asia will be impacted, and I think China will be impacted the most in the long term. Maybe not in the short term, because China still has access to Iranian oil. Scott Bessent announced today that they will lift sanctions on Iranian oil in order to make sure the global economy is not too impacted by this war. But in the long term, the Chinese economy, it is now much too focused on export and manufacturing in order to shift to a much more diversified economy.
Right. People seem to be more inflamed, not just emotionally, but physically, and more tired than ever. And food is part of the reason.
Too.
Bad food. Ugh. Tastes good, but not good for you. For most of human history, people ate actual food. Stuff that your body recognizes, but now you eat a ton of chemicals.
People ate actual food.
Paleo Valley is the solution to this. Paleo Valley's bone broth protein is made from, 100% grass-fed and finished beef bones. That's it. No fillers, no additives, no weird industrial byproducts. It's actual food turned into something you can consume every day. Most people use it the way we do. You blend it into a smoothie or coffee. The chocolate flavor is top tier. It actually tastes awesome. They also have vanilla and salted caramel. Plus, they make a savory original turmeric ginger and an unflavored version you stir into soup, rice, or even just mix with hot water and drink, like bone broth. You can do any of those things or all of them. Americans use Paleo Valley to support joints, digestion, recovery. Paleo Valley verifies sourcing and tests for pesticide, and that does matter. You don't want to drink pesticide, though you probably do inadvertently. If you want to add something genuinely useful to your diet, visit paleovalley.com and use the code Tucker for checkout. 20% off your first order if you do that. That's paleovalley.com, code Tucker for 20% off. So it's not just the West that is locked into the current arrangement where we consume the East produces. It's the East. They're locked into producing. So this is a massive reorientation for everybody, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I would say, look, the East is going to be much more impacted than the West, because at the end of the day, the Western Hemisphere, America, the wealth in the Western Hemisphere is just tremendous. The Western Hemisphere is self-sufficient, but that's not true for Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is very dependent on energy from overseas.
How does this affect Africa?
Right. So with this war in Ukraine and with this war in the GCC, experts are saying that in the worst case scenario, you could have famine in Africa because so much of food and energy sustains the African economy. And so, yeah.
Okay, just moving west now. What about the GCC? What does that look like in 5 years?
Right. So, unfortunately, the biggest loser of this war, regardless of how it turns out, okay, even if the Americans were to win, the biggest loser is the GCC. Because for the past 30, 40 years, the GCC is basically built on a mirage because it's essentially a desert with very little access to fresh water and very little agriculture. And so it couldn't really sustain a large population. But with the petrodollar and with American military protection, then the GCC nations felt free to invest in technology that allowed them to grow the population, right? So these desalination plants, modern infrastructure. So you sort of saw this massive growth in Dubai, in Qatar, in Riyadh. And what this war has done is shattered this mirage and revealed the limitations of the GCC. So for example, look at Dubai. So Dubai for many years has prided itself as this safe, very cosmopolitan, very open tax haven. So a lot of wealthy people immigrated to Dubai. But because of this war, and we're talking about like a few drones hitting hotels, it's really shattered the image of Dubai. And once you shatter this mirage, you can never ever rebuild it again. So the idea of Dubai as like the future New York or London, the financial capital of the GCC, this mirage has evaporated.
Iran in 5 years?
So Iran is being devastated right now. So the Israelis and Americans are attacking critical infrastructure. So the Israelis attacked the largest gas field in Iran. The desalination plant was destroyed. But we also have to remember what is being hidden from us. And what's being hidden from us is the fact that the Israelis and Americans are trying to destroy the capacity of the state to govern the nation, basically destroy the state's monopoly on violence. And so what we're hearing are attacks on police officers, on military installations, and there's talk of special forces going into Iran and starting to fund dissident groups, right? Like the Kurds and the Palakis in southeast Iran. So no matter what happens in this war, it's going to be very hard for the government to maintain national control, even if they were to survive this war. And also another huge issue for Iran is that for the past few years, it suffered drought issues. So its agriculture was heavily impacted. They were actually talking about moving Tehran, like moving these millions of people out of the city of Tehran because the capital can no longer sustain this large population. So this war will only exacerbate these environmental issues, especially with the attacks on critical civilian infrastructure, for example, dams, reservoirs, desalination plants. And it's going to take years and years for Iran to recover from this war as a nation. And you have basically the stirring of ethnic sentiments. You have the destruction of the state's capacity to deliver basic services. But the good news for Iran is that it seems as though they will be able to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz. And that is critical because now they're able to charge a toll on anyone who uses the Strait of Hormuz. And they're talking about 10%, which should generate about $800 billion a year annually for Iran. So the nation will be destroyed in this war, but if it's able to harness the pride of the Persian people, if it's able to unify the Persian people, and it's able to leverage the resources of the Strait of Hormuz effectively, then we can expect Iran to rise again in like 10 to 20 years' time.
Where is Israel in a few years from now?
So, if you look at the main beneficiary of this war, it is Israel. Because Israel has an ambition called the Greater Israel Project, which is what they believe that their God, Yahweh, promised to their ancestor, Abraham. And so they believe that Yahweh promised Abraham all the land from the Nile in Egypt to Euphrates in Iraq. If you look at the entire map, it also extends to Anatolia, which is southern Turkey, and even into Saudi Arabia. So if you look at what's happening, well, it's convenient in that the GCC is being destroyed. Saudi Arabia will probably be drawn into this war. It is possible Turkey will be drawn into this war as well. And this war allows Israel to remake the Middle East in its own image. Also, if you think about it, according to game theory, the main constraint to Israel achieving the Greater Israel Project is actually not Iran, but America, because America guarantees the military safety and protection of the GCC, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, these nations. And so if Israel is become dominant, it's become the hegemon of the Middle East, it needs to figure out how to remove America from the equation. And quite honestly, this war has shown the limitations of American power. It's really annoyed the American people. The American people do not want this war, and American people don't even understand why America is still in the Middle East. And so it's very possible that regardless of what happens in this war, America is forced to withdraw from the Middle East, in which case Israel is able to achieve its Greater Israel Project.
Standard security cameras cannot prevent break-ins. They can help catch burglars after they've done it, but that's a little late, no? They can steal your stuff, scare your family, maybe hurt you. You need a security system that will stop home invasions before they occur.
Maybe it will.
That's why we always recommend SimpliSafe.
Maybe I will.
SimpliSafe is a whole home security system backed by 24/7 monitoring agents you can rely on, even when you're gone. Proactive crime prevention, it's not reactive, and that makes the difference. Plus, no required long-term contract that gives you flexibility to switch if you don't like it. That's unlikely, though, because we think SimpliSafe is excellent, and they're so confident in the protection, they back it with an anti-theft guarantee. Used by over 4 million people, 20 years of experience, named Best Home Security System of 2026. It's the peak of the industry. And right now, listeners to this show can get 50% off their new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/Tucker. It's simplisafe.com/Tucker. There is no safe like SimpliSafe.
Got him.
It was clear to me that that was part of the motive, that Israel understood this and roped the United States into this war in order to get the United States out, in order to hurt the United States and get the United States out of the Middle East. Do you think that will be successful?
I think the way this war is going, this plan will work. And the reason why is the American military has not fought a real war.
Should just play a regular mode on easy and just
2003, this war in Iraq was not a real war.
Try to take everybody out. Everybody's a target.
Basically gave up. He didn't have air defense.
Almost done.
Because those economic sanctions had destroyed his economy.
What'd I do?
And his logic was this: let the Americans invade. They can't possibly invade because if they destroy us, that would make Iran, which has hostilities against America, the regional power. So why would America do this? It is self-defeating. It is not logical. It is not rational. So I'm not worried about them attacking me. And he was surprised when they did attack because it was not logical. It was not rational. But they did attack. And it was a cakewalk. It took about 2 weeks. America achieved air supremacy very quickly, and they rolled into Baghdad very, very quickly and toppled the regime. So that was a very quick and easy war that fit the American military doctrine of shock and awe. Iran is completely different. And the American military does not want to fight this war because they've war gamed this countless times. And each war game, they discover that they lose because the American military, it's too bulky. It's not as nimble and resilient as the Iranian military. And we're seeing that play out right now, where you have these devastating carriers, Abraham Lincoln, Gerald Ford, threatening Iran, but not actually doing anything because they're afraid of getting too close to the coast of Iran because then they become susceptible to drone strikes as well as hypersonics. So the Iranians have been preparing this for 20 plus years. They know the entire American playbook, and they have the perfect strategy to counter the American playbook. So America will have a really tough time winning this war. The great problem, okay, the big question now is, will America send in ground troops? Because once America sends in ground troops, then it becomes pot committed. It's mission creep, some cause fallacy. It'll be like Vietnam all over. So right now there's talk of 2,500 Marines who've coming in from Okinawa. They'll be in the Middle East in about 7 days' time. And the talk is, the rumor is, and I don't know, but the rumor is the intention is for them to take Karg Island, which is the main oil depot for Iran. So Iran exports 9% of its oil from that facility, the island. And if the Marines were to take it, it would be great optics. You know, Trump would look good on TV. It'd be a great boost for the for American morale. The problem is that you can take it, but you can't hold it because it's too close to Iranian coast, and the Iranians can attack with artillery, with drones. Okay, which means that you now have to take on the coast. You have to occupy the coast and create a forward operating base. But then you're exposed to the Zagros Mountains, right? Which means that you're now forced to occupy the mountains as well. So it's mission creep. It's exactly like Vietnam, where in 1965,
I'll take a saber, sure.
3,000 Marines went into Da Nang to occupy an air base, and like 4 or 5 years later, you have a 500,000 troops, right? So it started off as a very limited, self-defined mission, but then it just balloons. So America could find itself in the situation very quickly.
If you were the commander-in-chief of the United States, what would you do at this point, as of today?
Throw a battle axe at him.
Commander-in-chief meaning Donald Trump?
Yeah, you get to make the decision. What does America do next? If it's acting in its own interest, if it's trying to preserve its power and wealth at this point, what does it do?
First of all, I would acknowledge that all these events are interconnected, right? So this trade war of China, this war in Ukraine, this war in the Middle East, it's all interconnected because the American empire is too overstretched. And it has its fingers on everything. And so it allows its enemies to provoke it into these never-ending wars. So what I would do is basically sit down everyone, okay, including Russia, China, Iran, and say, it's time for a new world order where we are partners in this relationship, right? Before America was the hegemon, before the US dollar was the world reserve currency. But now, what we want to do is open a dialogue where everyone is respected, where America is no longer the bully, but a willing partner in creating a new economic order that benefits everyone, and not just a few.
The other guy.
I think that's the wisest possible advice and probably the only path that preserves civilization. But the one country standing in the way of that is Israel, which is the only beneficiary of this war, as you just said. I think that's true. Can you think of another beneficiary other than Israel of this war?
Well, Russia benefits, right? Because Russia is trying to win this war in Ukraine.
That's correct.
And America is forced to lift oil sanctions. And so now Russia is now able to take all these war profits, right? And then help the Iranians, finance the Iranians in the struggle against the Americans and the Israelis. So the Russians also benefit tremendously from this war.
Yeah, but fair point. Israel has to be constrained by the United States in order to do what you just recommended it do. Is that possible? Does the American president have the authority to control its client state?
So if you look at the domestic situation in Israel, Israel no longer behaves rationally. It is sort of overtaken by eschatological fever, right? So if you look at videos coming out of Israel, there are rabbis going around saying
don't
that
take the
this war
saber,
in the Middle
man.
East, even though it's destroying Tel Aviv, it's good for us because this will lead to the coming of our Messiah.
He knows too much.
So they believe that it is when Israel is under the most strain, when when the very existence of Israel is threatened, then God will intervene because the Jewish people will come together as a nation again and commit themselves, renew their faith in God. And once God sees the blind, trusting, absolute faith of the Jewish people, then he will save his people by sending his Messiah, who will then redeem the Jewish people. So another saying this is secular temporal matters don't really matter. This war in the Middle East, not an issue. What matters is divinity. What matters is our relationship with God.
Yes.
So what matters is faith. If nuclear bombs go flying, doesn't really matter.
It's what's so interesting is that 25 years ago at 9/11, whatever you think of how that happened and why, there was, I saw it personally, a political Islam. There were Wahhabists, there were a lot of Islamic radicals around the world, and for a bunch of reasons over 25 years that hasn't disappeared. There still exist Islamic radicals, but it's not an important political force anymore. At the same time, as Islam in general has become much more moderate, and the GCC is the most obvious example of this, there has been a rise of Jewish Wahhabism and evangelical Christian Wahhabism, so to speak. I mean, you've seen this eschatological extremism among some American Protestants, Christians, and some Israeli and American Jews. How did that happen? What is that?
Right. So first of all, I don't think we can ever overestimate the influence of eschatology in American politics. Exactly. So I'll give an example where about a quarter of Americans are evangelicals, and a lot of them are Christian Zionists. So they believe that Israel is crucial, the linchpin to achieving God's plan and the return of Jesus. And so a very prominent figure that you probably know very well is John Hagee, who runs something called the Christians United for Israel. It's 7 million members. And these are the people who are financing a lot of the conflict in the Middle East, in Israel, because they're the ones who are funding West Bank settlements. And so Christian Zionism, it is an extremely powerful political force in America. So your question is, how did this happen? And yes, the issue is that this is a plan that has been in motion for centuries.
Kind of worked.
And it's a very complicated history, but it involves different religious groups among the Jews, Sephardim Frankists, Shabbat Lubavitch, which you've talked about. But also it involves the Freemasons, the Knights Templars, the Rosicrucians. It involves the Jesuits. So you have these different secret societies, different religious organizations working together for the centuries to achieve this plan for the end of the world, which heralds the Messianic age. Okay, and there are different components of this plan, but the basic components are: one is the creation of the nation state of Israel, which happened in 1948, and then you need to have the building of the third temple, which requires the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is actually which could happen during this war, given what we've seen so far. So the Israelis have closed off the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as other religious sites like the Church of Holy Sepulchre to tourists these past few days. Very hard to do. There's rumors that for the past 2 years, the Israelis have been conducting these archaeological digs under the Al-Aqsa Mosque to basically destroy the foundations of the mosque, so that they can conduct a controlled demolition of the mosque and blame it on a missile strike from the Iranians. And there's actually talk among the Israelis of using this plan to ignite a war between the Arabs and the Persians. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque needs to be destroyed for the third temple.
Took out a whole bunch of people.
About this war of God between Israel and the entire world.
Hi guys,
the coming of the Jewish Messiah, the creation of the Greater Israel Project, the return of all Jews from the diaspora. So there are different components to this plan. If you just observe geopolitical events,
Everyone see me. That was stupid.
we're seeing these events converge together
I
today.
see.
I mean, all these events are playing out. So it seems as though there are these very powerful shadow forces working behind the scenes.
Yeah, like
We
in
don't
one
know
of those
who
movies,
they
maybe
are,
just playing
but it
easy and
seems as though they're
around.
able to control geopolitics in a certain manner as to fulfill their eschatological script.
What role do you think Donald Trump plays in this?
That's a really hard question to answer. So let's look at two possibilities. Okay? First possibility
Not the way you play this game.
that he's been employed as an actor. And he's just following a script. He doesn't really know where this movie is going. He's just doing his part. But he's manipulated behind the scenes by people around him. And you know, when reporters asked him, like, why is this war in Iran happening? He did say that his advisors, which includes Sivakov, Jared Kushner, Peter Hegseth, Marco Rubio, told him that the Iranians were so close to getting a nuclear weapon, and that the Iranians were attacked first. And so I was basically misled. And I think that's probably true, in that Trump surrounds himself with certain people that have a certain political eschatological agenda. So that's one possibility, that he's just an actor. Another possibility is that he himself has a messianic calling. Okay, and what I mean by that is, if you go back to January 2021, he was politically dead, right? Because the January 6th riots happened. He was impeached twice. And then after he left office, there was lawfare conducted against him, and he went bankrupt. So it was as though the entire world went against him. But now he's president of the United States. And so how would he personally understand this? I think a lot of it is God has asked him to serve. There's a call to serve, and he has to fulfill a mission. What this mission is, okay? What this mission is, whether it's to save Israel, whether it's to save America, whether it's a part of a grander scheme, only he in his heart knows. And I think no one except him knows, okay? So I think that's another possibility. And the third possibility is that this is all Israel's doing. Netanyahu is the one who's forced him into this sort of situation because the Israelis attacked first. And Marco Rubio said this, where, you know what, we wanted these negotiations, but the Israelis were planning to attack. If they attack, the Iranians would be compelled to attack both the Americans and the Israelis.
Like the
we don't want to put our soldiers in harm's way.
Oh no,
so
he's not like saying it's a good thing. It's just saying
so
he's like in his mind. This is probably
and all
what
his
he thinks.
machinations. Another fourth
he's ordained by
possibility is
God.
they have co-opted him. Like there's blackmail on him. There's and he has absolutely no choice but to do what he says because he's compromised in a certain way, and maybe his family is under threat. So all four are possibilities, and quite honestly, I have no idea which possibility is the most correct.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does, and I've really tried to keep, speculation to a minimum. You always want to believe that people's motives are transparent, that they state why they're doing what they're doing. But of course, you can never know what's inside a man.
Oh,
right?
we're starting at
Even
the
in yourself,
flamingo,
it's hard
bro.
to know your own motives very often. So I
Flamingo
think
time, baby.
That's a wise take. What happens to North America, United States, and I do want to include Mexico and Canada.
It's
we don't think a lot
flamingo
about those
hour.
countries, but they're both massive land masses, and they have big populations, and they're our neighbors. And so if the world is reorienting, I think you need to think in terms of continents rather than just nation states. What does that look like in 3 or 4 years?
Right. So from a geopolitical perspective, if America is forced to retreat back into the Western Hemisphere, it needs to worry about resources. And so it is in the best interest of America to eventually take over and colonize both Canada and Mexico.
Yes.
Mexico for its labor supply, Canada for its resources. Canada's probably the wealthiest country in the world.
I know.
And so from a geopolitical perspective, if the world is retreating into self-sufficiency, if there's mercantilism, if there's trade barriers, then America has absolutely no choice but to ensure its own supply networks. And that means eventually taking over Greenland, Canada, Mexico, Latin America, Cuba, Venezuela. So America doesn't really have much choice in this matter. At the same time, what we're seeing is that this war, as well as other events, are causing global fissures in America, especially between left and right. So witness what happened in Minneapolis in January, right? And so we can expect that as this war continues, and there's a strong possibility that Donald Trump will call a national draft in order to ensure the manpower to fight this war, then you will have rioting in the streets, you have massive violence, in which case the National Guard is deployed. There's a plan to deploy the National Guard to all major American cities by April.
He's got a bunch
and
of
so, unfortunately, America, it's probably going to suffer many years of sectarian violence. Not a full-fledged civil war, but maybe something along the lines of
I'm a flamingo ninja tonight.
In Ireland. You know, I'm not sure if you've seen this terrible movie called One Battle After Another. It's just a terrible movie, by the way, but you know, it gives you insight into what a civil war might look like, where you have these insurgent groups fighting against the state. So yeah.
But you expect the United States to hang together as a coherent nation state.
We'll use a gun just in case it gets a little sketch.
Listen, Tucker, the United States is the greatest nation in the world. The people are open, generous, entrepreneurial, energetic. The resources of America are infinite. America is a kind of a fortress so that it's protected by 2 oceans. America doesn't have a peer competitor in North America and South America. And so, I mean, America, regardless of what happens, America will still come out doing pretty well, just because of the pure energy and creativity of its people.
See, you mentioned Canada. Most Americans don't even know the capital of Canada. Canada does not appear on their radar. Doesn't figure in their thoughts.
Objective
but you
on
described
here,
it as probably the richest country in the world. I think that's objectively true. And yet Canada is not a rich country. In fact, it's getting poorer. Its life expectancy is declining. Its GDP is declining. And that's on purpose. The nation of Canada has been suppressed on purpose. Its population is being killed off by the state, through its assisted suicide program, and its population is changing through mass immigration against the will of the population. So that country is being held down on purpose. And my question is, by whom and why?
Sure, that's a great question. And this is something that I struggle with all the time because I am a Canadian citizen. I went to school there. My answer is that Canada was never really a nation state. It's more of a glorified resource colony for the British, the city of London. And the reality is, now that the British are under a lot of strain, the city of London is under a lot of financial pressure. It sees places like Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And what do you do if you have financial issues? Well, you do corporate restructuring, right? You change the middle management, right? And historically, you know, the British got along very well with the Indian elite, right? They went into India and stole trillions of dollars from the Indians, and the Indian elite were perfectly happy to help them, right? So why not use the same model for Australia, for Canada? So, you know, there are millions of Indians who've immigrated to Canada in the past 5 years. There's been a lot of strain on the Canadian economy because housing prices are you know, have exploded, and so ordinary Canadians can no longer afford to buy a house. And it's put tremendous pressure on the Canadian welfare system, on the Canadian economy. And you would think that the proper strategy would have a moratorium where they're like, you know what, we've had too many immigrants and we need to close the borders and absorb these immigrants because we want to ensure that these immigrants have proper housing, they have decent jobs, right? You would think that that'd be the right strategy.
Yes.
And instead, Mark Carney goes to India and says, we want more Indians. And also, we'll give you scholarships to come to Canada to study for free. Meanwhile, there are a lot of Canadians who are homeless, who are unemployed, and who cannot put food on the table, but hey, we want more Indians. So if it's not corporate restructuring, if it's not trying to asset strip Canada, I really don't understand this strategy for this.
think Sierra Knox had an appointment.
Well, I mean, it's a kind of genocide, right, against Canadians, people whose ancestors built the country. But you wonder what the purpose is. Like,
There can only be one
because it is
flamingo
happening
man
all over
around
the
here.
West, all over the English-speaking world, in the white countries, and it's not an accident. It's not organic. So, it's a big picture, you know, that spans from Australia to Ottawa. And what are we? What is that? Do you know?
Right, so let's look at Europe. Because in 2014, this was a major turning point in Europe because you had these tens of millions of refugees trying to escape these wars in the Middle East, created by America's wars in the Middle East. And they were trying to reach Europe. And at this point, Europe had a choice. It could choose to close its borders and maintain its cultural identity, or it could open the floodgates. And Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, she said something really famous, and which stuck in my mind, which is, we can do this. We are Europeans. Somehow we can take in these millions of refugees and welcome them into our societies and thrive as a people. And the complete opposite has happened. You've got millions of these refugees who fled into Europe, not because of their choice, by the way, but because their nations were devastated, right? Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq were all devastated in these wars against terror in the Middle East. So they go, and these are proud Islamists. They love their religion, they love their family, they love their community. And so they're not going to absorb themselves and assimilate themselves into Europe. And today, you're looking at population replacement in a lot of cities. You go to certain places in Britain, and you might think you're in Cairo or Baghdad. And this has caused tremendous conflict throughout Europe. I wouldn't be surprised if like 2 to 4 years' time, you have civil war break out, insurgencies break out in places like Britain and France. So the question is, why is this happening throughout the world at the same time?
Exactly.
Why is it that these different nations, whether they're European, whether they're Canadian or Australian, why are they adopting the same policies, not just in terms of COVID, right, but also in terms of like immigration? And so that's one of the great questions that we have to ask about the world we live in today. It seems as though it's almost a controlled demolition of Western civilization, right? The Anglo-speaker, Western Europe. It seems as though these nations are being destroyed purposely. For what end? I don't know. But I would just say there's a certain pattern that has emerged, and the result can only end up in the controlled demolition of these societies.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's up for debate. I mean, of course, just look at the bottom line numbers. Of course, the white populations are being killed on purpose, and the question is why. And I don't have the faintest idea, and I know there's a lot of speculation as to who's doing it. I'll just say bluntly, I don't know. I mean, I know who the instruments are, of course, but Keir Starmer's not in charge of Great Britain. Macron isn't in charge of France. I'm not sure how many leaders really do have control of their countries. I don't know how many countries actually have sovereignty. I really don't know the answer. But something is going on. Is there any precedent for this in history? Have you ever seen anything like this as a historian?
Right, so you look at what's happening in Ukraine, where the war is lost. It was lost 2 years ago. The Ukrainians have lost over 1 million fighting men. A lot of their people have fled overseas. No matter what happens in this war, Ukraine is finished as a nation state. It is no longer viable as a nation state. And rather than admit defeat and come to a ceasefire with Putin, what the Europeans are doing is just saying that we're going to draft our men and have them fight in the trenches of Ukraine, which would be suicide because the Russians dominate the battlefield with their drones and artillery and trenches in Ukraine. So it's almost like a suicide mission. But not only that, but the Germans have said that, okay, we can only draft German men, but not Islamic men, because we're afraid of their loyalty. Which means that you have a situation where, local men like British, French, German men are being sent to die in the trenches of Ukraine, and you know,
fuck
back at
did I do?
home, you have these immigrant population that are not assimilated
There's a
into
bird.
your culture. So it's a really weird strategy. And I don't know who comes up with this sort of with this sort of stuff.
Go fuck off.
Look, there's no historical precedent
bird
for
outfit.
this. There just isn't. I mean, there's been incidents of mass immigration. You go back to the fall of the Roman Empire and how these you know, hordes of immigrants flooded the Romans. And it's almost impossible to assimilate so many people. Eventually, there's going to be a cultural takeover. Eventually, with so many people who are insistent on maintaining their cultural identity, eventually, because they have more children than you, eventually they're going to overwhelm your cultural identity.
Yeah, and I do think that is the story of history, one population replacing another. There's no such thing as multiculturalism. There's always a dominant culture that, you know, that insists on dominance, of course. I just don't think there's ever been anyone who thought this could happen globally, like a systematic targeting of a race for elimination globally. I mean, well, it wasn't possible until pretty recently, but it would be interesting to know what the plan is. There's clearly like a plan behind that. There's a plan behind everything. How many Americans do you think understand what's actually happening in the world right now?
Is preoccupied with a patient
who unfortunately, I think that if you are educated in America, you know, I went to Yale, and so I know a lot of these Ivy League people.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we've been indoctrinated to believe certain values, and these values are not questionable. So for example, there was a court case that went to the Supreme Court about affirmative action at the University of Michigan. And affirmative action is clearly against American values, against the idea of American meritocracy, right? But the Supreme Court said that affirmative action was good because diversity is an inherent good. Okay, and it's interesting because if you go to a place like Yale or Harvard or any of these Ivy League schools, there's actually very little diversity. I'm talking about intellectual diversity. Yeah, I mean, like there's different skin color, but if you actually look at the ideas that they engage with in the classroom, it's a very conformist setting. So it's one of these great ironies where affirmative action is supposed to bring diversity to the classroom, but if you go to any classroom in an elite setting, it's extremely conformist. You're not allowed to bring up these issues about, you know, population replacement, immigration, because then you be called a racist. And that's the worst thing to be called, right? I mean, like you're better off being called a pedophile, right? Pedophiles have more rights now than racists. Unfortunately, it's not just what's happening in current events. It's also what's happening in the classroom, where and in the popular culture, where people are not even allowed to ask questions that are like blindly obvious if you just walk the streets of any, you know, Western city.
Oh, you've lived around the world. I think you're now in China. Does the rest of the world see this more clearly?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the West and if you're not subjected to this brainwashing, indoctrination that they feed you in the schools, it's obvious. Again, it's blinding obvious to anyone if you just walk the streets of any major city in the West. So there's a joke in China, and so Chinese don't actually like to go to Canada for tourism. And someone asked, why doesn't anyone recommend Chinese going to Canada? And the response was, well, would you recommend someone going to India, right? So it's a bit racist. It's very racist, okay? But I mean,
there we go.
You know, it's obvious to people.
I was supposed to use
it's just interesting because, like, I'm not defending the whites. I am white, of course, but you know, white people have done a lot of bad things, just like people do a lot of bad things. But in general, people like to go on, as you just noted, vacation in white countries because they're pretty nice. So I think you'd have to say, if you took the emotion out of it and just like looked at it net, whites have been, you know, pretty big addition to the world. Invented a lot of stuff, created a lot of beauty, created places people like to go on vacation, which really is a good test. So like, why would you destroy all that?
Look, so in my school, I teach the great books. I teach Western civilization. I teach Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey. I teach Plato, the Republic. I teach Dante, the Divine Comedy. I teach the Bible. And my students love it because Western civilization, it's just not about people being white. It's really about what it means to be human,
right?
And what it means to be spiritual and to have connections with the divine. So it's unfortunate that just when the world needs Western civilization the most, the West decides to destroy its own civilization. I mean, Homer, Dante, Plato, Shakespeare, the Bible, these are timeless classics that speak to every human. I know because I teach in China to Chinese students who have actually no exposure to Western culture, yet they fall in love with Plato, Dante, Homer, and Shakespeare. And why is that? And it's because there is eternal truth embedded in their words. And so universities, Western universities, ought to be the places, the fortresses that are the greatest defenders of Western civilization. But if you go again to these elite universities, Yale, Harvard,
Flamingo
they're
guy
the most
finally?
critical of Western civilization. They don't want to teach Homer and Dante and Plato. And it's like, if you don't teach these classics, what's the purpose of university? I always thought the university was the heart and center of civilization, right? It's like what monasteries were in the medieval age.
Oh shoot!
And I thought these professors, they would dedicate their lives
Any of you guys running around?
to promoting the classics, but instead they now promote complete nonsense like DEI and yeah.
Of all the, and this is my last question, Professor, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I hope it won't be our last, and I hope we can have dinner when we're on the same continent. But this is my last question. Since you've traveled so much and lived so many places and speak multiple languages, where would you say the part of the world that's most hostile to Western civilization, as you just described it, is? Trying to understand where this hostility is coming from.
Well, I would say Canada, Britain, Western Europe. I would say these places are the most hostile towards Western civilization. Chinese people have tremendous respect for Western civilization. In fact, in China's, in the process of promoting the classics, Plato, Homer, Shakespeare, in China, because Chinese recognize the tremendous cultural value and immense eternal truths embedded in these classics. So we're in a very weird situation where the West is destroying itself by abandoning what makes it great, which is, these classics.
Oh,
I think if we talk longer, I'm going to start to cry on camera. So I'm going to take an emotional break here, Professor. Thank you.
Okay.
No,
I did not mean.
No. I'm half kidding. No, it's emotionally resonant for me because I know that you're telling the truth and it comports with everything that I've seen. And so it's hard to accept something that's true, but I think what you're saying is true, unfortunately. So bless you for this, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Tucker.
Open that door, dude. Where's she going? Damn it. Should have took the shot when I could have. Should have took the shot when I could. I don't even know if they're racing right now. Defeats the purpose. Oh, what now? Oh, getting this syringe. Too late. It's alright. I have other plans. What now? I don't know. I want to shoot him in the car. I have to wait. Just wait it out. Let's look at this guy.
Lately, something feels off about everybody I meet.
His voice feels off.
And every place that I go. I just
Almost
have
done.
to say,
Just
I went to the
last
store the other day.
Everything's clean.
And it
Cool,
kind
man.
of felt like I was in a dream or maybe a nightmare. It was very, very weird. People are in a daze. And
people
what
are
it
in a
feels like
daze.
to me is it's like they're in mourning, like something has passed away. That's the energy or the vibe that I'm getting. And humans that I've met, they have lost the spark that they used to have. Something is really wrong with people. And it's almost like seeing zombies that just don't care about anybody. They don't care about anything.
Over.
And I can feel it. And to me, it's emotionally exhausting to be around people right now. And I'm going to be brutally honest, but people now are less honest now.
Saved.
They are more rude now, and they're disrespectful. And ignorance and narcissism is rewarded right now in the world, and that's just not right. And I've lost quite a few friends over the last 10 years, and it's not even from like growing apart naturally. These friends are no longer the same people that they used to be. Like their core is different now. They changed. Then sometimes I think, well, maybe that's who they were all along, and they just revealed their true self. When I think about all this stuff, it just makes me want to stay
classic flamingo fit
whenever I can. And you know, I'm an introvert anyway, but I'm losing the desire to go out and to be around people. Now, I honestly miss the days before the internet even existed. Right now, I really miss those days. Because right now it feels like everyone's carrying a burden.
And Grace Miller,
and to me it feels like everyone has given up in a way.
Why don't you step in and offer
Everybody's on edge.
You're good with a wrench.
Nobody trusts anybody anymore. And that even comes down to saying hi to somebody, like nodding at them. They're like, what's this guy up to? He's nodding at me, he's probably wanting something. There's something going on there that I don't understand, and it makes me very uncomfortable. But there's really no real connection out there right now.
No big deal.
And when you go out, like if I'm planning to go out, I expect bad interactions now. Like 90% of all the interactions that I have now are with rude people. And it's interesting because I do meet a nice person every now and then, and I really remember that person because it's like a rare find. It's like finding a diamond or something now to find a nice person. It reminds me of, I was at my other apartment and I was taking a walk and I found a $100 bill laying. And you know how rare that is. That's what it feels like to find a nice person now. I get that same feeling. To prove this point, there was a guy at the grocery store when I went there the other day, and I was going through the self-checkout, and he was over the self-checkout. And he said, hey, I like your hat. And I said, hey, thanks, you know. And he ended up, we joked about Star Wars. And he was just really helpful and nice. He wasn't overbearing or anything. He was just nice. And I was like, I can't believe that this just happened. I was in shock. But it used to not be like that.
I'll take the bonus.
There used to be a lot more of those people. People used to interact with each other. And I think that social media, and I think that technology has something to do with it. I think it has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
Because if you're in a waiting room, you're waiting to get your oil changed, something like that, everybody has a phone. And I mean everybody. It's really not even an age thing anymore. Everybody has one.
Any weapon.
And I think that these phones, that this technology and this ability we'll talk about in a minute to get news has broken something.
Hammer?
Something that's
that work?
Vitally necessary in people. It's broken it. It's broken their ability to be human. It's broken their ability to connect with other people. And I think we have to say that nothing like this has ever happened in history. And it's really about this ability to communicate instantly. So technology is able to feed people things that aren't true. It puts people on edge. They're able to get this bad news, and they're able to get this news that is sketchy, and nobody knows what to believe anymore.
Loosen the tire.
And I see these things pretty much, well, I mean, every day when I look at my phone about what's going on in the world and why things are going on in the world. And I look at some of them and I'm like, what? Really? That happened? This is happening? And then I step back and I say, well, should I even believe that? What should I believe?
Well, I think that's the guy supposed to shoot.
Feel like I wish I could do something about the things I'm hearing about. I wish I could do something about these terrible things that I hear.
That's unfortunate.
I can't do anything. I mean, there's nothing that I can really do from my apartment. And I'm confused by all of it, and I think other people are. And it's just very frustrating to be in this timeline that we're in right now. And the world truly does seem to have turned upside down, and it seems like all the purpose has fallen out of it. And I don't know where it went. And I
what's
can't
this button
find
do?
It's lost. And it's a kind of nostalgia for a time when we had a purpose, when we all had hope. And I find myself going to places where I can be alone when I do go places.
Did I do that?
So if I go out, I'm doing things like going to the park. I walk around the apartment complex here to get away from things and to get away from people and to unplug from all of it. And it's just a crazy time. And I think all of this is happening because people, they don't want to talk
it's unfortunate
about the things that are happening in the world. They just listen to what certain people online say. They absorb whatever today's tragic news is, and then they go around like there's some kind of drones or something. And the only connection that they are getting is online connection, which is honestly a kind of fake connection. And the news that we're getting, we don't know if that's real either. And this whole thing that's happening, it's not working. I mean, we can take a step back from it and say, well, this is happening. We got technology, we got this, we got that. It's not working. And it's changing people. And everybody, I think, feels all the divisiveness around us. And I think people are afraid to talk because everything is so divisive right now. And a discussion with somebody is kind of like a gamble. It's like deciding if you want to walk through a minefield or not. because an explosion could happen at any second. And this is happening with people in their families. This is happening with people's immediate family. It's happening with just friends now. It's like an everyday thing. And you know that if you think for yourself that that is actually considered to be a bad thing now, and you might be outcasted from a certain group or by certain family members, and that fear about communication doesn't promote good communication. When you aren't even allowed to have your own opinions about things, how can you have a real relationship with another person? And all of this is leading to a feeling of hopelessness in people. And maybe that's the right feeling to have at the moment. There's no real reason to care for a lot of people because we feel like the shoe is going to drop at any moment.
Just gonna have to kill him.
With all the stuff that's going on in the world, every day it's something new. And people don't know how to talk to each other anymore. They don't know how to work things out. And the big one here, they don't know how to help each other anymore. People used to know how to do that. And it's sad that we're so divided that we can't even talk.
No, you didn't see shit.
The solution is that we are going to have to turn back the clock, in a sense. We're going to have to learn to talk to each other again. We're going to have to learn to work things out amongst each other.
Goddamn cops.
Any differences. And as humans, we are going to have to learn again how to find common ground. We're going to have to work for what's good, for what's morally right, for what's just.
Just blending in. I'm just working on something.
Humanity. So what I've been thinking
no big
is
deal.
There is something that we can do. There is something that I can do. And I guess it's just
a mechanic.
To try and to continue to be an example out there in the world, because as much as we stay in, and I think it's justified right now, we do have to go out.
I can't be bothered. Sorry, what happened over here,
the
guys?
grocery store. But try, when you get out there, to be an example, to start
nothing
to
to
change,
see exactly.
To be the change that society really, I think, desperately needs right now. One thing's for sure.
Yep.
I know for a fact that the answer to all this isn't going to be losing hope, and it certainly isn't going to be becoming a drone ourselves, becoming a zombie ourselves.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, nice
Anyway,
body you got there.
I thank you so much for listening today, and I'd like for you to let me know in the comments what you're seeing out there when you go out. Just put it down there, let me know. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all so much for being here on this channel. And if you want to hear what I think about relationships and marriage and dating during these modern times, then you can check this video out next.
No thanks, sir. I'm okay, thank you.
Do rich and powerful people go into the middle of the woods and sacrifice kids to a demon god? Let's ask the question, do they? Well, this movie seems to think they do. A film about a talk show host that decides, for the sake of boosting viewers, he gets a demonically possessed girl to come live. That sounded really wrong. I meant he gets a demonically possessed girl to be live on stage, so he can see if this is real or not. So he can maybe have his experts debunk it, or maybe just shock the audience and get some of these ratings up. However, over the course of the night, it turns out not only is the demon may be real, but the demon might also know our main character, this talk show host, from something that happened in the past, something very, very interesting that could relate to something happening right now in the real world. Late Night with the Devil. In my opinion, one of the best hybrid found footage horror films made in the past 2 decades. This movie is batshit crazy, y'all. And I freaking loved it. I think I watched this in 2023, 2024. When did it come out? 2 years ago I saw this, and I was like, what the hell am I even witnessing right now? Today I want to go into the demonic entity that's featured in this film, what it is exactly, the gentleman's club that is featured in this film, and what it's based on, and
I've got
real
a
life
lovely
members
bunch of
of
coconuts.
the club existing in our world known as the Bohemian Grove. That is referenced in this film. In this movie, I forgot the name of this actor, but this guy's really, really damn good. And he's in a lot more roles now, and I'm glad to see him get his shine. This guy plays a late night talk show host who really doesn't care about anything but getting views up. He doesn't care if people in his staff are dying, people that he's brought on to his live show hosts, to his live show are dying. He doesn't care. He's like, on to the next, we need to get these views up. Then we get this girl who seems to be possessed by an entity she names Mr. Wriggles, a demon from hell. The demon not only takes over, but takes over multiple people, kills multiple people,
death
sends the audience into this horrible ritualistic experience of hell. It turns out this demon is a servant of a higher being known as Abraxas. This, I don't know what you would call him, a demonic god who, according to the cult that's featured in this film, the cult of Abraxas, they say that he is neither good or evil and influences us to be neither good or evil, because there is no good or evil. There is just what we desire and how we're going to get it. That's the dark belief that this group has, and that is what Abraxas, this higher form, higher level demonic king god, represents. And the current demon in this film is a servant of him, I guess, to collect souls. Now, once you start to see the demon fully manifest in one of the crazier ways you've seen, this isn't like a typical demon you've seen in cinema. No, this is like a melting pot of light emitting from this girl. Once the audience and you start to get sent into the visions of this dude's life and how he knows this demon, you start to see some very interesting things go down. This demon claims it met him at an event in the woods. And we as the audience don't know what they're talking about, but we see glimpses of it in his visions. This ritual with owl masks in the woods. Apparently this guy was a member of a gentleman's club called The Grove.
Gotcha.
As it is referenced in this film. And in that gentleman's club, he, along with others, but he primarily made a Faustian bargain. For success, for wealth, for clout, he would sacrifice something. And that's something happened to be his own life.
Good, I want to restart.
Now, shit, I should have said spoiler warning. Damn it! Spoiler warning! You weren't supposed to, I wasn't supposed to tell you this. I should have reviewed it first. Oh, fuck. My bad. I'm gonna put spoilers in the timestamps. Spoiler warning for everything now. This is a big twist that I shouldn't have spoiled. His wife dies of cancer, even though she never had any history, never had any disposition, never smoked a day in her life. She dies of cancer. And it's told to us that, oh, she died because he made the Faustian bargain to this demon at the Grove in the middle of the woods with all these elites. And now he got his talk show. And in the course of this film, he's forced, via hallucinations of his wife again, to kill another person, which ends up being this girl who's demonically possessed. Thus completing the ritual and letting the demon claim his soul ultimately. And at the end of the movie, he's surrounded by all the members of the cult. And we know that he is locked in there forever, locked in his perpetual deal with this Satanism. So this demon succeeded in doing one, cementing the ritual, taking the soul completely. I don't know why he required 2 sacrifices instead of 1, but I guess that's what it was. But what he really wanted also was to capture the souls of the viewing audience. And he was able to do that through this talk show. This is one disturbing film, y'all. And by the time you're done it, the entire third act of this is like a hallucinatory demonic acid trip.
I just beat a crowd of people. Big deal. Flamingo down.
And I think it's very good. I think it's one of the better ones. It's actually one of the first films to touch on a real-life elite society properly by name. Bohemian Grove I'm talking about. It's one of the first films, I think maybe the only film to actually reference Bohemian Grove and have it as an integral piece to its plotline. And I like that a lot because I think more movies should do that. We've seen satanic cults in films before, right? So this movie isn't really doing anything new from that angle. But the Bohemian Grove is a very, very specific organization. A lot of my friends told me about this. Like, hey, there's a real life cult that's in this, by the way. They're alluding to real life things. So I want to dive into the Bohemian Grove a little bit because there was actually a leak of the members that are in it. I think New York Post. We're going to get into that because I think it does kind of relate to this film. And I'm just reading stuff. Any member of the Bohemian Grove who might be watching, not saying you are, not saying they would ever watch me, but I'm just saying in case. Cover all my
Bullshit.
bases. The Bohemian Grove is a private 2,700-acre ground in
didn't like me doing
Montevideo,
that.
California. California is where it's all at. I'm gonna visit there one day.
Deal.
So I can take a piss on the Hollywood sign. Owned by a San Francisco-based private arts club, the Bohemian Club. Established in 1872, it hosts an exclusive all-male 2-week midsummer encampment for some of the world's most powerful men, including politicians, business leaders, and artists, to network, perform plays, and engage in rituals. This is 100% factual.
I want to go over the parking lot, but I don't know where the
and it's
boat
proven. I
rental
don't even know
hut
if the Bohemian
is.
members have denied this, to be honest.
Wish I could
Alex
see the
Jones,
map.
of all people,
Guess I could
managed to
check it
film a
out.
ceremony at the Grove that fueled a bunch
See
of
if
conspiracy
I
theories
like
for
this or
decades
not.
about what's really going down here. So let's dive into what these theories could be, because we know the contents of this grove, from the little we do know about it, are
go to the
rituals,
marina.
them in weird costumes, an
Probably
owl
near the
deity
boat rental
statue
place.
thing, and powerful people. This thing consists of powerful people, men only.
Or you took
Let's
too
dive
much
into the
damage. We'll
rules
have
of
to.
the Bohemian society. It's men only. There's some controversy there. What about the women, man? Where the feminists are out here saying, what's going on?
Maybe a
Why only
ninja.
men, huh? Weaving
The neon
spiders come
ninja.
not here, a foundational motto encouraging members to leave professional networking and business deals at the gate. We're going to get more into that. No media or electronics.
Only overalls.
Confidentiality at all times. Guest limitations. Members may bring guests, but numbers are limited and heavily screened.
There was a flamingo suit.
Particularly during the midsummer encampment. Behavior and conduct. While the camp is known for high volume drinking and theatrical performances, severe violations of social conduct can lead to suspension or expulsion. Apparently this has happened to a couple of people, including one that we're going to get to. Alright? Now, I want to know why. Why is this organization doing this? Why is it the way it is? What's up with these rituals?
I think I will.
There are
the
three
neon ninja.
main ideas that people bring up. Either it's Satan Moloch worship, either they're worshiping the devil or a Moloch or some kind of demon head, or it's just a bunch of rich people being bored and this is their extracurricular activity, or it's strategic planning at a high level for the sake of policy
just get a
and global
lockpick.
interests, which is one of the accusations that's been leveled against it in terms of controversy. I'm going to read this ritual to you and describe it, all right? The cremation of care is an annual theatrical ritual performed at the Bohemian
been a
Grove
clown.
in California to symbolically banish the dull cares, worries, and responsibilities of the conscious. It involves dark hooded figures burning an effigy of care. This is their care that the burden on them that they want to burn away, and so they can let off some steam and free themselves from the chains of society and existence.
It's a ninja reading the
They
paper.
burn an effigy of care before a 40-foot owl statue. Why? What's up with the owl god? Typically opening
Everything
the
normal
private
here?
club's summer encampment with music and pyrotechnics. And then there's also lakeside talks and musical performances.
Oh,
They're going
nice.
all
Right
out.
next to
And
the
there's a
boat
clear,
store.
heavy influence by stuff like Shakespeare. You can see that. And this
look at that.
club is so old that would make
Perfect.
sense. Now, theory number one is, dude, they're sacrificing kids when they're burning them effigies. And that owl god is Moloch. Or Baal, whatever. They are doing ritual sacrifices. Now, this club, even though it's private, it's still open. You know, like, you know about it. It is a public thing. You can Google and see what they're doing. You know? So, some people could argue it is hard to kind of traffic kids here and sacrifice them, you know? But maybe they have other areas where they do it. Maybe the stuff that we don't see is them doing that. Who knows? The other thing is influencing policy and global planning. This is the other thing. When you have a lot of politicians here talking to each other, they might get ideas and try to plan some stuff. Who knows? A lot of people have compared this to the Trilateral Commission started by, was it David Rockefeller? And Jeffrey Epstein has spoken about this, where this group was founded on the idea of maybe entrepreneurs,
Maxwell Rutter, the race
corporate
chief
elites can shape
coordinator, is worried that the
policy
powerful new
and the decisions that politicians make on a daily basis. Now, these are Epstein's words, but it was founded on the basis of that. So, while this is more of a professional organization, could this be a ritualistic version of that? And then there's the idea that maybe everyone's wrong. Maybe there isn't anything malevolent or devious about it. We just think that because they happen to be elites in a forest doing shit before owl statues, so it's weird. But it could be just this a macabre way of doing high-profile networking and various people rubbing shoulders with celebrities they like, artists, musicians. You know?
I have to give up my
Could be
sniper
just
rifle
that.
though.
I'm not discounting
No,
that as a
maybe not.
possibility. Maybe we're all wrong and it's just something, it's just
Ninja
a weird thing of
moves.
theirs. My only thing is, what's up with the rituals? Like, why does it have to be in this way? Do they just really like Midsummer and Shakespeare shit, or is there a specific reason behind that owl statue? It's very, very... There's some spiritual element here. I don't buy that any of these people are particularly religious, so what the hell are they doing here?
Ninja moves.
It's a really weird pastime for them. It's just an extracurricular activity they like to do to let off some steam from the pressures of being so powerful and elite, you know? And again, I'm not discounting that as a possibility.
Ninja disguise.
It just could be that. I'm rational enough to think that maybe not all elites are child eaters.
I'm a race marshal.
Who sacrifice them and alter owl gods. But because there's no evidence that that's happening here. But it is very sus looking, some of the iconography here. Now,
shut up.
The other thing that people mention is, well, maybe they're not doing business dealings or secret deals and all that. Because one of the rules is no business talk. This is just, we're trying to escape that. We're here to do anything but that. Now, of course, this is a public rule of theirs. We don't actually know what's happening. We don't know what they're talking about. If you guys are hanging out for a couple days here, God knows that some policy decisions are going to be brought up. Some ideas about the way to govern humanity. Who knows? Now, let's talk about the allegations and controversies, because you would think that there could be an organization like this that is public, but not as much as you might think.
What's this one?
And again, these are very powerful people. I'm sure if they wanted to remove people from existence that were putting up more terrifying allegations against them, they could. But still, labor violations and wage theft. Workers have filed lawsuits alleging wage theft and unfair labor practices. The Bohemian Glove has denied these, saying, "Hey, listen, you workers, you're employed by independent camps, not us, not the club itself." Very smart way to deal with the workers, I might add, on these elites' behalf. Networking and lobbying. Despite rules against business discussions, the club is often accused of being a place where powerful politicians, businessmen, and media figures network and influence policy. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been among those criticized for visiting the site with donors. If you know anything about Clarence Thomas, especially with regards to his name being brought up in the Epstein files and his relationship to Trump and all that, you know that there's some sus figures coming to this thing, okay? Now, what's the movie's take on the Bohemian Grove and what it really is? The movie leans into the demonic, satanic aspects of it. Yeah, they were doing devil worship. They were selling their soul to a demon. They were doing sacrifices there. The movie also kind of fucks with your reality as a viewer and the characters in it. It's set in like the 70s or 80s. It uses the satanic panic of that time, because that was a big thing. That was all the rage, satanic cults, Satanism, devil worship, all this stuff. They use the satanic panic of that time to distort your reality. It's almost like the directors and the writers, they know something. They're like, we're going to use the fear, outrage, and sensationalism that comes from the satanic panic of this time to cause a mass hypnosis. And we have people who argue that the ending of this film isn't what it truly was. Like, it was all in our heads, it was all in the audience heads, and it was all like a mass hypnosis done by one of the hypnotists there. I don't buy that, but yeah. But it does straight up connect practices at the Bohemian Grove to the satanic. Because there's a literal satanic cult who's worshipping the demon that's summoned at this Bohemian Grove. I don't think that the main character of this, being a late night talk show host, is incidental. I don't think it's just a coincidence. I think the writers actually know something, because I don't know if you know, a couple of members of the Bohemian Grove, like a list of them, got leaked. And guess who's one of them? Conan O'Brien. Now, we have people on Reddit who claim to be staff members of Bohemian Grove saying, yeah, Conan was there. Of course, it's Reddit. You can only take it with a grain of salt. But that is the case. Conan O'Brien was apparently there. And he just matches, the way he is, the way he looks just matches the talk show host a little bit in this movie.
Right in your face.
Kid Rock,
briefcase to the face.
Another dude who was apparently at the Bohemian Grove, got kicked out. Now, he claimed he punched somebody. There's another person on Reddit said, hey, yeah, Kid Rock was there and he made fun of a dude with disability and got expelled, got kicked out. You don't do that at the Bohemian Grove. They have very strict rules against that kind of shit. I don't know who he was making fun of. I don't know if Stephen Hawking was there and he was like, ah, bro, good luck coming. Good luck banging your wife. And then Conan O'Brien and whatever politician was there was like, go fuck off. We don't do that here. We just burn effigies to an owl god. So it's very interesting, man.
Gotta get up there.
Here's a link with that you can use to search names of everyone on the Bohemian Grove. If you have someone in mind that you think might be there, you can search it and verify. The New York Post leaked a bunch of these names. I don't know how they got it, but That's that, man. It's just a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting club that exists, and it's a very interesting movie that exists that relates to the club. And I think more people need to watch it. It's a cult classic, in the making, at least. But those are my thoughts on that. Bye, ladies and gentlemen. We are on a mission.
All right,
to take
over
Hollywood. But the army must keep growing. If you want to suggest video topics to me, or talk about your favorite movies or favorite film theories in a community with like-minded individuals, join the Zafy Discord now. Link is in the description and the comment section as well. Join us. This movement is just beginning. We're taking over Hollywood, one coke line at a time.
Fuck. Oh shit. I got one.
The fabric of time may be more permeable
Get
than
the right
we
one
think.
though.
Throughout history, mysterious photographs, inexplicable encounters, and technological anomalies have suggested that some individuals, some people, have crossed the boundaries of linear time. From Victorian academics stumbling through temporal rifts to modern internet prophets claiming knowledge of humanity's future.
Bro.
Time itself is the fourth dimension. It is a vast ocean, and some don't wade through it like the rest of us. They skip across time like a stone, defying the current, disappearing in a minute. Today's video is about, in my opinion, the most convincing evidence of time travel. You see it all the time. Videos pop up on Reels, TikTok. I am from the future. I am time travel. They predict stuff. It almost never comes true, but there are a few things out there that seemingly cannot be explained. It's incredibly mysterious. Follow me down this little rabbit.
See you, bye.
Peter Bergman, the man who erased himself in June 2009. A man arrived in Sligo, Ireland with the apparent sole purpose of erasing himself completely from existence. Peter Bergman
goodbye.
Change the future. He was methodically ensuring he would have no past before he died. On the evening of June 12, 2009, a tall, slender man with graying hair, perhaps in his 50s or 60s, made his way through the entrance of the Sligo City Hotel. When the thin man spoke, it was with a thick accent that was believed to either have been German or Austrian. He'd arrived by bus and he booked a 3-night stay at the hotel, paid for entirely with cash. Meticulous, he signed the hotel register with the name Peter Bergman, provided an address, which was Anstatten 15472 Vienna, Austria. The address, investigators would later discover, didn't even exist. There was no home, no building, just a vacant, non-existent lot.
We know from inquiries with the Austrian police that such an address does not exist, nor has it done so for many, many years. It's a vacant lot.
And what followed over the next 4 days after Bergman showed up at that hotel succeeded in baffling investigators for over 16 years. Sligo, Ireland is a town full of surveillance cameras, making navigating the town without being captured on CCTV nearly impossible. But in spite of this, Peter Bergman successfully avoided capture for the majority of his time in the town, only being recorded a few times and for the most part moving like a specter with purpose. Hotel CCTV, the only CCTV to consistently record him, captured him leaving 13 times, each departure following an identical pattern, carrying a purple plastic bag filled with items, returning empty-handed. Yet, despite extensive searches of bins, gardens, car parks, and the local dump, not a single discarded item from Peter Bergman was ever found. It was as if Peter's belongings had vanished into thin air. Something or anything that could have been used to identify Peter Bergman was being systematically and methodically disposed of by Peter Bergman himself. Peter also displayed an uncanny awareness of blind spots in surveillance. His movements suggested professional level training in evading detection, the kind typically associated with intelligence operatives or covert agents, but even experienced spies tend to leave traces when investigating. Bergman left nothing. The only clues we have are from those few individuals he interacted with, and what trace amounts of footage there are, it's a footage capturing his movements around Sligo, nothing more. On June 13th, he visited the Sligo post office and purchased 8 envelopes as well as stamps, indicating that somewhere out there are perhaps 8 letters he wrote in his final days. Witnesses saw him reading and writing at the bus station days later, even tearing up paper and disposing of the scraps, yet no letters ever surfaced and none of the discarded paper was ever recovered successfully. No one anywhere in the world has ever come forward claiming to have received correspondence from Sligo during that time from Peter Bergman. 8 letters to 8 people who either don't exist or refuse to acknowledge their existence. And on Sunday, June 14th, Bergman took a taxi to Ross's Point Beach, a peninsula with beautiful, amazing views, and he had asked for a nice, quiet beach where he could swim. Though he carried no towel, no swimming gear,
that was the best view yet.
Surveyed the beach briefly, seemed satisfied, and proceeded to enter the taxi and return to the hotel without ever actually stepping onto the beach. Extremely
we only had like 6 casualties in the race. That's not bad.
Place that he would die.
That's normal.
Bergman had chosen his exit point with the same precision
that neck.
he
Now I
applied
got 7
to everything
casualties.
else. And investigators believed he intended to have his body wash out to sea to complete his erasure, but the tides betrayed him and washed his body back to shore, leaving the one uncontrollable factor to Peter, and that being the one that spawned this entire mystery. His body was found on that beach. The meticulous nature of his desire to be unknown went well beyond normal human dedication. Every label from his clothing had been carefully cut, not torn, but precisely removed with scissors. Police collected any means of identifying Bergman. His fingerprints, his DNA, they circulated it to police forces internationally, but it never turned up any results. This man never existed. What possessions he did have on his person when his body was discovered never provided any clues to his identity, unfortunately, either. And even with the help from the public, the media, the internet, trying to identify him through the hopes that a member of the public may recognize him both at home and abroad in mainland Europe, they never found any answers. Nothing ever came out. It wasn't just that Peter Bergman didn't exist. It was as if he had never existed and nobody had ever known who he was. The autopsy for Peter revealed perhaps the most puzzling aspect of all. The man who called himself Peter Bergman was dying. He died of drowning, but he had many other afflictions in his body which must have left him in incredible and constant pain. He had advanced prostate cancer, bone tumors, and evidence of several previous heart attacks. And on his body were 55 aspirin tablets, but toxicology reports showed no drugs or alcohol in his system, not even aspirin. So the lack of any form of painkiller or drug in his system may indicate that he was intentionally avoiding treatment. This detail is terrifying and haunting. A terminally ill man with maybe weeks to live at most, traveling internationally, disposing of his belongings and maintaining a careful facade, all while enduring pain that should have been unbearable and would have been to most people. It suggests either Peter Bergman possessed superhuman willpower or access to pain management techniques that are currently unknown to modern medicine. Because he's a time traveler, that's the implication there. But what followed was a 5-month investigation that expanded internationally. Interpol was notified, databases across Europe and America were searched, media appeals ran in multiple countries. Not one person has ever come forward to identify Peter Bergman. Think about that, it's insane. In our completely interconnected world of social media, facial recognition, and digital footprints, a well-dressed European man with a gold tooth, distinctive appearance, completely vanished.
That poor guy.
And 16 years of investigation have yielded nothing at all. It's kind of unbelievable. It's very interesting. No missing person report matches, no family searches, no employers wondering where this guy went, no medical records show treatment for any of his various terminal conditions. This man never existed and didn't want to exist anymore. All these incredibly interesting details along the way have only served to build this legend into something disproportionate from what he would have ever wanted, which I apologize. I realize the fault in what I'm doing currently. I apologize, Peter, but he navigated CCTV blind spots with precision, suggesting either extensive reconnaissance or foreknowledge of camera positions. He crafted a completely fictional identity with untraceable details. He functioned at high levels despite terminal illness and no pain medication, and he made multiple bags full of physical objects disappear without a trace completely in spite of intensive searches. And as of 2025, the case has gone cold and remains in what Detective Inspector Mulderig calls sleep mode. waiting for someone, somewhere to move the mouse and bring it back to life. But with each passing year, the likelihood of this happening diminishes, memories fade, potential witnesses pass away, and evidence degrades. There is no trail of this man. He appeared, meticulously dismantled his life, then it ended with no signs that he existed in the first place, like a man out of time with no way of returning to it. So there's many theories, obviously. It could have just been a man who was
blending in, alright.
meticulous throughout his entire life, having lived a life, not interacting with society. That seems unlikely, but it's possible. He could have also been a time traveler. That's the conspiracy. This man never existed. That is not a conspiracy. He existed. He was clearly alive right then and there, but he didn't exist, and there's no other evidence. It's confusing. Interesting, confusing, tragic as well. At the beginning of the new millennium, between the year 2000 and 2001, the internet's first major time traveler emerged from the digital shadows. His name was John Titor. I'm not exactly sure, but he used the handle TimeTravel01. Bit on the nose. He claimed to be a soldier from 2036, sent back to 1975 to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer needed to debug legacy systems that were facing a catastrophic timeout. As a computer guy, this is hilarious. But as a cave-dwelling troglodytic conspiracy theorist, this is convincing. His detour to our era was personal, but during his stop, he wanted to check out the interest in time travel online. He shared his insight and story on the near future on an Anomalies Network messaging forum that has been archived from 2001, in other chat rooms from 2000, as well as in archived faxes that he reportedly sent in the late 90s. This dude was really wanted to get his message out there. Now, one thing that has to be acknowledged, John's technical knowledge was disturbingly precise. He accurately described the IBM 5100's hidden ability to emulate mainframe systems, a feature that IBM had deliberately kept secret and wasn't publicly confirmed until around 2000, conveniently when John began posting on forums. Very suspicious. He even referred to a Unix timeout error that resulted in a technological collapse in 2038, but he was sent back to 1975 to prevent it in 2036. And the Unix timeout is a very real issue that systems could face if computers still count time in seconds, and if not remedied on January 19, 2038, operating systems and software running 32-bit could malfunction. This is a real, genuine thing. Very easy to fix, but real and genuine. And his C204 time displacement unit, manufactured by General Electric in his timeline, operated on principles of micro-singularity manipulation that aligned eerily with acknowledged theoretical physics. He posted detailed schematics, operating procedures, and safety protocols that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both engineering and temporal mechanics, at least based on our understanding. And his explanation of time travel suggests the multiple worlds theory to be the correct theory for our reality. And with every jump through time, a new world is created, so you can't influence your future, which is why there's no chance of a paradox being created and he could interact with people from the past and share knowledge like he was doing, which to me that makes the most sense of, you know, the whole butterfly bullshit. Nonsense! Or whatever. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. Like, the simulation thing makes the most sense. You're just creating different save games, if you will. So John came from a future of societal collapse and rebuilding and warned us of what was to come. His predictions included a new American Civil War in 2005, which didn't happen, and also Russia launching a nuclear strike against major American cities in 2015, which also, as far as I'm aware, didn't happen. That is what happened in his timeline, in his past, and at that point in our future. So obviously these predictions failed to materialize, or maybe they did. Titor himself invoked the many worlds interpretation, claiming his presence created a new timeline with roughly 2.5% divergence, meaning with every new world created, it was roughly 2.5% different from the previous one, and perhaps this 2.5% divergence prevented the 2005 US Civil War from coming to fruition, and thusly preventing the United States from being in a weakened state to embolden Russia to launch a nuclear strike in 2015. Now you could say he was just wrong, or you could say his warnings may have succeeded in their purpose, which steered us away from a dark future. When a weasel chewed its way into one of the electrical transformers of the Large Hadron Collider, it sent reality into a freefall, landing us in the weasel timeline. But That doesn't line up since that was in 2016, 11 years after the supposed Second American Civil War. So I'm not exactly sure. We were also supposed to get nuked by Russia before the Weasel timeline. So maybe we're in 3 or 4 different timelines. There's just all this divergence. It's entirely possible that the John Titor story could have been an elaborate but well-informed hoax from someone seeking to provoke a reaction by stirring up conspiracy theories online. It's very fun to do that, I have to admit. Whoever John Titor is, they are a relatively intelligent person. That much is inarguable. They detailed features of long, out-of-date computer systems that weren't known outside of small circles familiar with their development. It's perfectly possible that he worked at IBM and was just a regular ass guy, but in the forum posts, many people challenged the assertion that John is a time traveler with various thought experiments and questions to challenge his knowledge of our time. Which of course, with the caveat that if his answers are wrong, it could be justified under the 2.5% world divergence, or
could just punch everybody right now.
Why he won't, can't, or shouldn't answer. So pretty convenient. So far, he didn't predict shit. And yeah, kind of a loser, to be honest, but very interesting nonetheless. Additionally, the Titor case took a strange turn when the investigations traced connections to the Haber family of Florida. Larry Haber became CEO of the John Titor Foundation in 2003, and posts made by Titor in chat rooms shared that he comes from the same geographic area as
Or I save and punch everybody in the face.
Made of John Titor's writing style to that of Larry Haber's brother Maury, with Maury even responding to a video denying his involvement, but alleging that there would be consequences if activity like this continued. Some of the language that was compared as being consistent between John and Maury are very common phrases, so it's not what I would exactly call a compelling piece of evidence that they would potentially be the same, but I'm not sure. No one has definitively claimed authorship of John Titor's writings. The mystery endures because Titor created something more than just a hoax. He crafted a mythology that continues to influence contemporary conspiracy culture.
This way.
He's
Good idea.
Amongst the Charlies. This is Frankie, my dog, my best friend, and the healthiest pug in the entire world. One of the reasons she's so healthy is because of today's sponsor, Sundays for Dogs. This is Petey. Petey is also very healthy, but a little bit more picky than Frankie. And being a busy adult man with like 3 or 4 full-time jobs, it's difficult to give my dogs the care, attention, and food that they absolutely need unequivocally. I've tried everything from frozen food to cooking food myself, and I've settled on Sundays for Dogs once again. Both of my beautiful pups. Sundays is real food that happens to be for dogs that's made with human-grade meats, organs, and superfoods. It's also vet formulated, made in the USA, and shelf stable. I can just pour it directly into their bowls and watch them enjoy. There's no mess and absolutely no stress. It is very easy. You'll get 50% off your first order when you use code OOMPA. You can click the link in the description, or you can go to sundaysfordogs.com/OOMPA. Thank you to Sundays for sponsoring this video, and thank you to Sundays for making my puppies very happy.
Anybody else?
Charlie Chaplin began his comedy capture on film in 1914, but in 1928 he would capture something totally out of the ordinary for the very first time. The Circus, the latest masterpiece from the legend Charlie Chaplin and his funny little mustache, was poised to be an overwhelming success. The Hollywood premiere was a spectacle in its own right, and it attracted crowds of eager viewers. The air buzzed with anticipation as everyone who was anyone clamored to witness the newest creation from the genius who revolutionized on-screen comedy. He's kind of like me. Not really.
Right next to the exit. Anybody want to go?
That was supposed to be ironic, sarcastic, and stuff. It was supposed to be cameras captured the entire event, immortalizing the electric atmosphere and the immeasurable excitement to watch this funny little man with his tiny little mustache. The event included a vibrant pre-show prologue titled
that one looks like it hurts.
which dazzled the audience with a live performance by Sid Grauman's 3-Ring Circus. Pretty epic stuff. The circus, I feel like, is underrated. We need to bring the circus back. Did it go anywhere? I don't know nothing about the circus. Never been to one. Don't know what it is. Seems cool and the music's funny. While filming the eagerly awaited premiere, the camera not only captured the excited crowds and circus acts, but also focused on a zebra statue outside of the event. This little zebra statue. This little guy. And in the scene, it recorded a woman in a heavy coat strolling past, seemingly engaged in a conversation on a BlackBerry, a phone of some kind. What is she doing? Why is she doing that? Hello? This is before any form of mobile phone. I don't even know what phones looked like in 1928. It was probably the little horn thing, the little horn that Hello, 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 hello. In today's world, that is completely mundane. It's a totally normal sight to see someone walking around going, hello, hello, hello.
Waiting for anybody else.
Something so ordinary that we wouldn't spare a second glance or thought to that. However, witnessing this in the context of the past leaves many bewildered, scratching their heads in confusion, like idiots, like myself. Back in the year 1928, the concept of smartphones or cell phones or any form of mobile phone just didn't exist. Wireless communication was, of course, thought of thanks to our boy Nikola Tesla, but the idea of that being a widely applicable thing that people just can get at a store, you know, let's just say the Apple Store wasn't around yet. So the question naturally arises, what could this person possibly be holding in their hand, and who were they speaking to? You see, the first cell phone call wasn't made until 1973, when a man by the name of Martin Cooper, an engineer at Motorola, called Joe Engel, the head of Bell Laboratory, which was then owned by AT&T. And this call that Martin made was essentially a troll call to flex on AT&T that Motorola had beaten them into creating the first usable cellular phone.
And I said, "Hi, Joel, it's Marty Cooper." "Hi, Marty," he says. "I'm calling you from a cell phone, but a real cell phone."
All right, no one wants to play.
Handheld, portable cell phone. There was silence at the other end of the line.
I'm done.
Hello, you bitch. All right, I'm
good,
gonna listen to the
everybody.
Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin because it's popular right now, said Martin in 1973. Mobile phones
none the
predate cell phones.
wiser.
You could easily argue that. Sure, Bell Systems mobile telephone service in the 40s is one of the very early iterations of a mobile phone. But still, those were not handheld, and footage displaying them shows them in vehicles because the equipment to utilize them weighed approximately 80 pounds. And I don't see that bitch near that zebra carrying around an 80-pound backpack. The premiere of Charlie Chaplin's The Circus featured someone seemingly talking into a smartphone-sized device, a brick, if you will, spurring the theory that this was in fact a time traveler captured unknowingly.
197, it's going up.
And the first cell phone used by Martin to mess with Joel was the size and shape of a toddler's rain boot, which is epic. I wish they would make these pieces of shit the size and shape of a toddler's rain boot.
I can just do
Toddler's Rain Boot, also an excellent name for a band. Comment down below your favorite band names. I've been thinking Frankie has hepatitis B.
All right, well, that's going to be it for me.
So this woman is potentially the earliest
see you guys
example
tomorrow.
of a cell phone being captured
Part 2, Guys in the Arena.